Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 5 of the Nancy Drew Game Ranking Series, where we are going to be ranking all of the Nancy Drew games from the worst to the best in the category of the atmosphere and ambiance, or whatever you'd like to call it. I'm your host, Jameson.
And I'm Julian.
And this, I imagine, is going to be one of the shorter episodes in our ranking series, because there's not so much that we've decided we need for criteria for this, and likewise, it's a pretty simple topic. This is all about whether or not a game feels good, whether or not a game plays good, really just two main pieces of criteria. The first one, of course, is vibes.
Vibes are really important, and going back to what Jamie said about this being the shortest, that is not to discredit atmosphere in any way, shape, or form. Atmosphere breaks, or makes or breaks a good Nancy Drew game.
There's some games Julian loves that I can't stand the setting of, and then there are games that I think are kind of like no fun to play at all, but I just absolutely love the location.
So vibes is just, it's more so the general... the vibes. No,
exactly.
It's how you feel. How immersive is the environment? Is it pretty? Is it aesthetically pleasing to look at? What's it got going for it? But then the also criteria we're going to be looking at in today's list is the mechanics. Is there anything unique or something special about the way that you can interact in this environment?
Mainly when we talk about this, we mean, oh, is this a game where you can just walk to places? Can you drive to places? Do you just click on a map and go there? Or can you just rock climb, sail, scuba dive, golf cart, and all of the above?
Can you pay an Italian man to sing for you with a montage of clips?
Yes, that's another big make or break right there. So, in short, this again is probably going to be another subjective list, a lot like the music one, because, you know, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and this is all about making sure we have pretty games. To help put our bias in check for this list, we had our good friend Sylvia join us to help rank the list and make everything in order without letting all of our opinions steamroll everything too hard. Unfortunately, Sylvia fell sick before we were able to record the first session, but luckily she will be joining us for the top 15, so stay tuned. So moving on now to number 33. I think you're going to take this one, Julian?
Yeah, moving into the first spot we have on our list here for the worst atmosphere in any Nancy Drew game. We have the first Nancy Drew game, Secrets Can Kill.
Now, I want to make sure it's clear right now that this also counts for Secrets Can Kill Remastered, and we will not be holding graphics against any of these games. Because, honestly, some of the best games on this list are very old-gen games.
So I know that's kind of hard to believe then. If we're not holding graphics, why is Secrets Can Kill so high up here? Well, it's kind of because it never went to any lengths to be anything more than like a school, you know? Its setting is extremely bland. There's 3 locations, technically 3 locations. And
there's a fourth one in the original game.
Oh yeah, I know.
Vandalay Pharmaceuticals for a single cutscene.
There's just nothing really unique about any of the places in Secrets Can Kill. The one bonus that I can give it is that there's a jukebox that's interactable.
Oh yeah.
But other than that, it never went above and beyond in any of its aspects.
Here's something fun that I like to mention a lot that people don't know about Secret and Kill. Mechanics-wise, apart from just walking to the different places, you can actually, at least in the first game, use the map in the gymnasium, in the school hallway, to fast travel from location to location.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put some footage on screen of it here of us discovering that in our Let's Play. It was such a weird moment, because it was like the only time there was anything like that in a Nancy Drew that we could think of. Still, it's kind of impractical, but it was fun. Yeah, what do we have here? Study Dome.
If only it was...
Oh my god! It's fast travel! That was fast travel! Student Union!
What?
Oh,
this is insane! Man. Before we move on, we have to mention that the hallways are completely copy and pasted. I can't explain how many times I've been lost in this extremely simple, rudimentary high school.
It's a very realistic high school, I'll give it that.
It's just a maze, though. It's really, really bad game design.
Moving on now to number 32 on this list, we have a game that, to me, focused more on the story and suspect aspect more than making it an interesting environment, and that is Alibi and Ashes. I believe River Heights is supposed to exist in Illinois. Somebody dropped that in a comment somewhere. We're scrubs and we don't read the Nancy Drew books as religiously as we used to, so I can't say for sure. So it's really plays just like a Midwest town that's very boring. There's almost maybe 4 locations you can actually go to, and it feels like there's almost nothing to do with them but talk to people and maybe solve the occasional puzzle.
Maybe it's because Jamie and I live in a very similar town, I would say.
It's nothing new.
Yeah, this was nothing new to us, and it wasn't really impressive either. It's kind of just a bland Midwest town. And another thing that really hinders this is the way navigation and travel works in the game.
Yes, it is so annoying. I would call this easily the worst game for having a map, because it gives you whiplash from one thing. The way that the map screen works in this, you click on a location, and then the Nancy car just goes like makes 90-degree angle turns down one-way roads.
No, it's so bad. And we've talked to a lot of people. We're not the only ones that get, like, nauseous from watching it over and over.
It's dizzying.
And the map really would have benefited from just labels or text on the map instead of hovering your mouse over every little thing, because there's a lot of places to remember on it.
Yeah, and likewise, one of the things that just really bugs me about it is that so many of these places, when you get there, there'll be a single line of dialogue if it's a secondary location, or maybe a sound effect, like if you go to the River Heights Zoo, you hear an elephant or something, and that's it. You don't even get to see a screen like how they had in Secret of the Old Clock.
Yeah.
So that really did detract from the vibes of Alibi and Ashes, in my opinion.
Moving on to number 31 on our list, we have what I can imagine being very controversial. We have the Haunted Carousel.
Okay.
But allow us to elaborate. The Haunted Carousel is a game I hold near and dear in my heart, but it has a number of atmospheric flaws, and it's so disappointing because this game takes place in an amusement park, and they did it so poorly.
I would have loved for a remaster of Haunted Carousel, or at least a visit to another amusement park somewhere in the franchise, because it's such a cool setting, but I guess they just didn't have the budget at the time to render the full park. Because the way it works is, every time you step away from a location, you just get to look at this really lame Kitty Town Park map and click to where you want to go. Half the listed locations aren't even available. You can only go to where there's suspects or like the haunted house. And along with that, you can't really explore it. It never feels like you get to explore this park, which is a real shame.
Not at all. In our most recent Let's Play, we were just trying to look at background scenes and everything, and while we were on the carousel, I remember seeing like 2 different giant Ferris wheels in the background, like immediately next to the carousel. And
how fun would a timed Ferris wheel puzzle be? That would be terrifying.
I know. This game would have really benefited from riding one of the rides. I know there's that little exchange with the roller coaster, but that doesn't amount to all that much. I don't know. We just needed to be able to navigate through the entire park, walk down all the pathways, look at like abandoned, I don't know, food vendors or something. Like, there was so much missed potential with it, and it was all ruined by that damn map that just pops up whenever you leave a location.
Ultimately, this game had a lot of single-serving locations. You visit the roller coaster park once and then never come back. Nothing else interesting happens there, despite it being one of the coolest parts of the game for the short-lived time it has. The carousel stops being important after you work out the organ puzzle. It feels like the game just really needed more places to explore and work around with.
And then the places that you can explore, like Ingrid's engineering place, Joy's little office, like, there wasn't much
to do in there. No, there wasn't.
They're
They're not the places I would associate with a theme park.
Exactly. So,
in short, I would call Haunted Carousel
missed potential.
Yes, a missed potential, which is the reason why I put it so down low on this list, because there was so much to be that I was left wanting at the end of this game.
Please give us a remake someday, Her Interactive.
Let us ride through the Demons of the Deep haunted house on the cart. Moving on now to number 30, we have another tried and true classic of the franchise, but at the same time, I feel like it doesn't offer much to the table, just like Secrets Can Kill in terms of setting. Stay tuned for danger. Now, Julian and I recently played Stay Tuned for Danger for the first time, like maybe 5 months ago, and it was the last Nancy Drew game that we had never honestly really played ourselves. And it was an interesting experience. I really, really liked it. I thought it was a really funny game. It was really charming. It echoed Last Train to Blue Moon Canyon in some ways, but atmosphere was definitely not one of those features. Atmosphere in this game was kind of like kicking yourself in the leg over
It was very rudimentary, and it was so boring.
Repetitive is the word.
So it takes from Haunted Carousel, right? That you just go outside, and then it's a map that you have to click on locations. Except they put a little more effort into it because you get the taxi lines, which are always really fun.
They're cheesy. I can tolerate that for 1999 game development.
Yeah, so I can look past that, but what I can't look past are the horrible copy and pasted hallways in the WBB studios or whatever.
WB studios are such a pain because this game, another big point that it got taken off with is they were still having difficulty working out navigation.
Yes.
You could not U-turn in Stay Tuned for Danger. It wasn't as noticeable as a problem in Secrets Can Kill because a lot of the places had like a full circuit loop. But in Stay Tuned for Danger, you have a U-turn symbol, and when you click it, it just takes you back a step.
It's so funny to me that there are 2 hallways, and you can never find out which hallway you're in until you have to like zoom in on a door or something.
Exactly. Like they're so similar looking.
Like they reuse the same paintings on the walls. It's all the same walls, same texture, same everything. It's just a pain. Now the one thing that I can give it on atmosphere is that I think they did a really good job with Dwayne Power's apartment.
Yes.
They really made it look like it's the slums, like it's a really crummy place, and that went really well with his character and his motivations and everything. So
They did a great job of just giving this man such a horrible place to live.
I know.
It really painted a picture for his character.
Exactly. It was the first time that they had, like, personally made an atmosphere tailored towards a character, so I can give him bonus points towards that. But
Otherwise, with a bit of janky navigation, the prop room, which is just an entire waste of space. God, I hate the prop room so
bad.
much. It's a goofy game, but I would definitely call it on the back end of the bus when it comes to having a good atmosphere.
Coming up next, number 29 on our list of the best atmospheres of all time, we have the Labyrinth of Lies.
Labyrinth of Lies, being game number 31, had all the graphical corners and probably budgetary reasons covered when it comes to making a good atmosphere for a game, but it just doesn't deliver in a lot of ways. The whole game is confined to this one location. There's no transportation to go anywhere, which always brings things back a bit. And the coolest parts of the game being the sets of the underground display. It can take at least an hour to get in there if you don't know what you're doing in the first place when you start this game. And furthermore, none of it feels real. It's all just artificial, and that kind of takes away from the vibes, if you ask me.
That's what I was going to get into. I know the entire thing is based around a play, and you're on a play set for a lot of the game,
Yeah.
but that does give an artificial feel to almost the entire game. I would say that my favorite part could actually be the museum, just because it was the realest part. It was a pretty museum.
It was a pretty good museum, because all the exhibits were actually pretty informative about ancient Greek culture.
Yeah, and then the amphitheater was nice too. But
Yeah, because I like all the pretty actual Greek artifacts, but all the, like, stage lighting and all the creepy stuff down below, you know, it looks cool. Like, I could make that my wallpaper, but there's nothing much to do down there when it comes down to how the setting works.
One other thing I'd add is that from the museum to the amphitheater to the sets, it didn't really flow well. They felt like three very different areas that are all right next to each other, and that kind of throws the player off when they're playing. It's a pretty game. Graphics are not being considered very much into this list, though, so there's not much we can do in that way.
I can compliment it on having almost no mechanical errors in terms of navigation or anything, but at the same time, it didn't really strive to do much innovative for mechanics. So, really, at the end of the day, Labyrinth, there's not so much to say about it for atmosphere. Just kind of bored me at times. Moving on now to number 28, we have a game that I was not a bigger fan of.
Yeah, we have a game that I appreciate a lot more than Jamie. We have Silent Spy. So Silent Spy, I can understand some of the critiques for its atmosphere being lacking, because some places are very much lacking. Looking at you, what is it, 10 Ravens Pub?
Yes, it's 10 Raven Pub.
Yeah, that's such a waste of space.
The reason why this one to me is so annoying, it's got probably, I'll give it to it. Silent Spy has the prettiest hotel in any Nancy Drew game, and Nancy stays at a lot of hotels. And it's also got a very pretty cabin that's like Shattered Medallion levels of scenic wildlife. However, two other locations in the game, being Moira's house and the 10 Raven Pub, you pretty much only visit once for something really important. You go to Moira's a couple times.
And they're so bland, too.
There's nothing that happens there. At the 10 Raven Pub, you need to go there to get a menu to find out what the hell haggis is.
Yeah.
And,
and you need shears, too.
yeah, that. Or the bolt cutters, whatever it is. Really, nothing ever happens at these locations, but what really makes that annoying is that to travel to them, you have to pay an amount of money, with the euros or whatever it is in Scotland. I think it's euros.
I didn't think that was too annoying, but talk about missed potential. I think the train station should have been a more boisterous, like, crowded spot. And same with the courtyards leading up to the hotel.
It's just quiet. It's so quiet there. It's eerie.
It doesn't feel right. All it is Alex sitting up against the wall there. It's like a loner.
They should have at least put, like, hushed voices and talking in the back, like the Hot Kettle Cafe.
Yeah, it's like an apocalypse in this game. There's just no one around.
I know.
Now, to get into the beautiful part of the game is Loch Lomond. And I have no complaints about Loch Lomond. I think it's like a Bob Ross painting.
That's a good way of describing it. It's a very ideal scenic meadow.
Yeah,
the cabin.
It is so pretty. There's a cabin, there's a training spot, and it's a very nice getaway, a nice escape from the otherwise, well, it's not really, there's not really anybody to escape from because there's nobody around.
Exactly.
It's just a very nice change of scenery.
As far as Moira's place goes, there's so many times in the game that I would, like, spend money on train tickets to get to Moira's house because I was stumped, and then Moira just wasn't there, so I would head back.
Yeah. And then the last point that I'd like to touch on is how out of place and silly and dumb the headquarters for this spy operation is.
Yeah.
In the bottom of this hotel, it's
the bottom floor. It's like the Pentagon war room. You have to put in your secret code in the elevator.
That just really threw me through a loop. It
Yeah.
did not go well with the rest of the game.
And the main spy master Ewan just wears like a Hawaiian shirt. It was
Yeah.
kind of goofy. The flashbacks of Nancy's mom was a great way of making the game more emotional and definitely adding a bit more sentimentality to it. But apart from that, there's only so much that Silent Spy has to offer in the atmosphere department. Moving up now to number 27 on the list, I think we've got our next really controversial pick. I had to set all nostalgia aside for this one. Game number 3, Message in a Haunted Mansion.
I really like this game, and I think it's because Jamie and I grew up watching Scooby-Doo.
Yeah,
And
this is a very Scooby-Doo game.
It succeeded at what it set out to achieve, which was just a very
classic haunted mansion with spooky side effects, shadows at the corner of your eyes, that sort of thing.
So
all sorts of smoke and mirrors.
It did great at that, but when you really think about it, it is such a confined location, and it didn't do anything special, and it's pretty boring.
You want to know one of my favorite parts about Message in a Haunted Mansion? It's the very first screen you see once Nancy clicks start game, and it just shows it raining and thundering and storming outside the mansion, and it's so spooky, and then like a light turns on or something. And then you never get to see outside again.
I know. I wish we could have gone to that summer festival or whatever.
The Winter Festival, yeah. It's so annoying because a game always gets much worse scores from me for atmosphere if it's confined entirely inside. It's really difficult to keep your place feeling cozy instead of claustrophobic in that setting. And this game feels a little claustrophobic, I'm not gonna lie. You've got some secret passageways to explore, which is always a lot of fun for atmosphere, but not being able to even have a window to see the outside world kind of brings things down a bit.
A lot of the hallways are copy and pasted, they're very similar, but what I can applaud the game on was that each room has a different theme, and by each room I mean 2 of the rooms that we go in.
Well, there's 3. Nancy's room has a Chinese theme,
Yeah.
first off the workers who work there. Abby's room is all celestial, and that's cool. And then the basement is an Old West
saloon. That was really cool, and it's like how I was talking earlier with Labyrinth of Lies, the areas didn't mesh well together. That's acceptable in this game because that was the set out theme of this mansion, and
I wish we could just see the other rooms though.
I know.
It's all just implied that they have wacky themes and stuff, but
Exactly.
the doors are locked the whole game.
Also unappreciated areas of the game, I really liked the library.
Library was great. It's a classic ND library.
And the hauntings always add to it. But
Yes.
the fact of the matter is we really can't rank a game that high when it would take me all of 5 seconds to get from point A to point Z. Like, you can just go through the entire mansion in 5 seconds, you know? It's such a small game.
It's a pretty small location, yeah. Honestly, it's a pretty short game, too. For Game 3, I would definitely call it great. Games 1 through 5, I would say, progressively got better and better, and Message in a Haunted Mansion is just as strong of a link in that chain as the rest of them, until the Secret of the Scarlet Hand. Moving on now to number 26 on our list, we have, I think, the highest score yet that this game has achieved.
Probably.
And that is the Shattered Medallion. So Shattered Medallion, not a fan. And no one's really a fan of this game. I bet if you were a fan of this game, it must be because it was your first one, and you were excited to play it and just do something new.
However, I would actually wager that atmosphere could be the thing it did best.
Yeah, Shattered Medallion, Her Interactive has a legacy now of kind of screwing the pooch whenever they have a monumental landmark of a game. They messed up 20, 25 was meh, and 30 was a disaster. This was supposed to be the Sunny June game. Blah blah blah. I can't get too far off topic because I know that that's not what we're talking about here. Let's talk about the pretty New Zealand stuff. So it's almost entirely outdoors, besides for scuba diving and going into caves. So really, this is entirely outdoors.
My biggest gripe with the game is that so much of it feels artificial, and that's because it's a game show. So it's more so the premise of the entire game is what I hated, and that seeped into the atmosphere. New Zealand is such a pretty location, and I'm forgetting specific names, but
Doubtful Sound is the lake.
Whatever the place is with the waterfall, man, it's insane. It's so beautiful there, and it has very pretty parts of the game that are like that, and the music complements it very well too. But so much of the game feels artificial, like all the sheep shearing puzzles and all of the scuba diving in this great big game show tank
Submarine. Yeah,
I was not a fan of any of that.
That's the big thing with Shattered Medallion is it doesn't feel like a friendly game because you're like just there on this game show, and you don't have any friends here. Bess and George, Bess is like super afraid, and George has just got a broken leg.
No, the main camp, it has really pretty scenery and a nice background and everything. And then you just get this, like, arcade puzzle palace just right smack dab in the middle, and that's just, like, it kind of breaks the atmosphere, because it's trying to be this technologically advanced, cool, crazy game show, and then on the other hand, it's this beautiful, serene New Zealand, and they can't coexist like that very well.
One of the biggest and most valid complaints I've heard about navigation in this game is how the hell did Game 9 have better kayaking than Game 30?
Yeah, no, seriously.
I feel like we'll get to Game 9 when we get to Game 9, but I feel like this game had a lot of cool ideas with having a submarine, going spelunking, and going kayaking and stuff like that, but it turned them into too much of a challenge. Like the kayaking part, you're supposed to race when you're kayaking, whereas kayaking to explore, like in Game 9, is much more fun because you actually get to take your time and enjoy it, whereas in this one, you're just trying to go around these man-made buoy markers. See, the parts of this game that are nature are beautiful. I love the rope bridge, I love the waterfall, I love the caves, I love the lake, I love the valley where the giant rock rolls down the hill and tries to kill you. But everywhere you look, you just see little bits and pieces of a game show and this soulless corporate entity that's just trying to put you on TV, and it makes things a little bit less fun all around.
And people can complain, well, that's the point of the game. Well, then I don't like the game, okay?
Well said! Moving on now to number 25. Oh man, I wish we ranked this one higher in hindsight, because I really do have a soft spot for the atmosphere. Game number 15, Creature of Puu Cave. So, Creature of Puu Cave gets a lot of flack. I have easily been responsible for a lot of that flack myself. I'm not a big fan of the puzzles in this game. I will applaud it, however, on having a solid atmosphere. Everything about this game, maybe, so sue me, I've never been to Hawaii. I can't verify how authentic it is, but gosh would I like to go, and man does this game make me feel like I'm there sometimes.
The biggest thing that hinders its atmosphere is that Frank and Joe Hardy are separated from Nancy, and they have two distinct locations that they can visit, but they can't interact until the very end game.
Basically, Frank and Joe get all the fun stuff, Nancy gets to pick up bugs in the jungle, and it sucks for most of it.
And I wasn't a big fan of the jungle part of the game, but I did very much like Dr. Craven's facility. I thought that was unique.
The Healy was awesome. That felt like Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated.
Yeah, it's it.
So here is one thing about the game that I think really sucks. You know how we've talked a lot before about how in Haunted Carousel, the game just forces you to go to a map screen, and you just have to, like, click on the location and then you're there? This game does the opposite. It makes you click through, like, 50 screens of nothingness in the jungle to get to a single character deep into the jungle. And I get it, we're going for this whole immersion sequence, this whole Heart of Darkness stuff. But then you have to click through all 50 screens to get back, and there's nothing to do there. The jungle itself looks very pretty. I like hearing the sounds of running water, and the bird calls, and all the leaves shaking in the wind and stuff. It's nice. And I love snorkeling in this game. Snorkeling is so much fun. Breaking into the Healy and having to put on Mr. Fighterman's suit, that's another blast too. It's a very exciting game for atmosphere in my opinion. And the setting changes plenty of times. You get to go from the beach to the reefs, to the jungle, to the Healy, to the caves at the end, all the way into the lava tubes of the volcano. It definitely delivered when it comes to Hawaiian atmospheres. I just kind of wish that they could break this game into multiple days so that we could have had a nighttime or a sunset sequence.
That's true. This game would have benefited a lot from a nighttime sequence.
Well, anyways, I think we've allotted plenty of time now to talk about Creature of Puu Cave. Sentimentally, I think that we really enjoy this one, the two of us, but there's a lot of stuff about it that we had to hold it back for a bit. Also, the GPS sucks.
Okay, moving on to number 24 on our list, we have Danger by Design. Now, we've been pretty open in the past about disliking this game, but I admit that it has a pretty nice atmosphere, especially the marketplace and the windmill. Like, those are two very iconic places to me.
I would hate the map screen more if it didn't have one of my favorite tracks in the game, because I low-key think the soundtrack is fire. The park is fun. It's a little too grassy and green and bland for my taste.
No, I think all of the vendors there, those add to the atmosphere. Like, that is really great.
Okay, that stuff is a bit fun. Just having street peddlers, and you get to, I do like that you actually get to haggle with people and just take a chance to see if you can actually convince them to lower their price. Likewise, in Danger by Design, I love the windmill. The Moulin is a really cool place. You know, Heather's office and the desk space there is kind of bland, kind of boring, but it is so cool to me to actually go into the rotund part and, like, walk around, because Manette says, oh, circles help my creative flow, so now I live in a giant one.
Yeah, so artsy. I actually love the opening cinematic of the game. It shows the windmill and everything.
I wish we could see big shots like that more often.
That was so pretty.
I'll put it here. I'll just have it looped throughout the entire review.
Okay, but places that detract this game are Gigi Ling's apartments. That was just... It was pretty boring.
Jean-Michel Traquenard's restaurant, where you can literally never look around. There's nothing to see there but Jean-Michel. And Jean-Michel himself is nothing much of a sight.
No, he's not. And then Dieter's office.
Oh, I like that place. Yes, he has a fish tank.
I was gonna say he has a fish tank going for... There's a secret passageway in there too, right?
Yes, he does have a secret passageway with a weird spider in it.
Spoiler alert. Nothing captivated me that crazy about this game. I guess it didn't hit hard on nostalgia.
You know what else it has that I almost always forget about because it's pretty late in the game?
Snorkeling?
Yeah, you go scuba diving in the Paris sewers with all the rats.
Yeah.
That's kind of creepy. And there's also the one weird archaeological dig spot. Overall, as far as being a fun game for the theme of Paris goes, I say Danger by Design did a great job. However, I am not the biggest fan of Paris. I've never wanted to visit. It's never really appealed to me. So, as a whole, this game is kind of set up to fail, in my humble opinion.
There's a lot of personal preference here. I can definitely see this being somebody's favorite atmosphere of all time, and that's good for you.
Good for you. I applaud that. Coming in at number 23, time to get very, very angry, everyone. Get those mean comments ready. Midnight in Salem, game number 33. I think Midnight in Salem did a great job with the atmosphere because it added a lot of places you can go to with almost no fast travel implement. Occasionally you go from point A to point B or C through a cutscene or something like that, and it just teleports you. But a lot of other games do that, and this game felt really full in terms of atmosphere. I actually feel like I could walk the town.
I think it's because the town itself was so lively.
Yes.
All the people chanting.
Why are there so many protesters?
I knew you'd say that. No, but it is little things like that. Just being able to eavesdrop on people's conversations added to the atmosphere a ton. And gosh, if they were able to do this in the era of like Sea of Darkness or something, like, geez, that would be insane.
Have people walk around?
Yes, that would be awesome because it's such a great feature. It's just poorly... okay, what were you gonna say, Jamie?
Elephant in the room. This game was developed on the Unity engine, which requires a lot higher demand than the previous engine for all the games. And as a result, a lot of people could not run this game on their computers that they normally play Nancy Drew on. Or they would have to run it with extremely low graphics, which were so bad that it was like jarring that you just couldn't even get into it. If you can't play this game on a good computer, I'd advise at least watching a Let's Play of it on a very high quality computer, because it at least makes it feel like a much cooler, vibier experience. And how can you give a game a bad vibe rating when you've got Lauren Holt and her luminous infusions? I don't want to get into the music, but it's just so groovy in there.
Yeah, there's some really nice areas, and then to contrast, there's some really poor areas.
Like, I love the cemetery. I like the museum.
I was gonna talk about the judge's place.
Okay, the judge's place sucks.
Yeah, that was pretty bland. And then the Hawthorne house was pretty disappointing to me too, honestly.
There wasn't very much to do in there, no.
Yeah, and that was like the main focal point of the game. There is an atmospheric puzzle where you have to pay attention to the music, and then we're asked later about what the music is that was playing in the background. That was pretty cool.
I thought that was funny. And I like the Perry house. The Perry house is a great kitchen.
The Perry house is cool, and I do like, you mentioned there's no fast travel. Yeah, that's right. I liked the conversations to be had on car rides with Jason
and Deirdre.
Those were just really nice things thrown into the game, even if, the animations on them weren't all the best.
Midnight in Salem, there's just so much to talk about, and a lot of it's not good, but I want to give it credit where it's due. I enjoy this game for atmosphere. And sometimes I'm down to just sit down and listen to the soundtrack, or just put on a long play with no commentary of the game. Mm-hmm. And in that regard, it's the kind of game that you need to go into with a different mindset from every other game. So I totally understand why a lot of people hate it with a vitriolic passion.
Mm-hmm. I think we should talk about the beginning of the game, though, and how much it sucked.
Okay, yeah. The reason why we wouldn't put this any higher is Mozam Castle. I don't know what they were thinking.
This is the worst possible thing they could have ever done to open this game.
The game begins at this weird castle place called Mozam Castle that, like, is never important again, and it's in Austria.
It's horrible.
Yeah, there's like no reason why it happens at all.
All of the walls are like so similar, and then outside is just like, it's
so dumb.
It's a terrible way to introduce the new Unity engine to your player base.
Exactly. That's a good way of distinguishing it. It's just such a weird place. It made the game look really bad because it wasn't even the part of the game they were trying to polish. It looked like a Nancy Drew parody at that point.
Coming up next, number 22 on our list, we have Tomb of the Lost Queen. Tomb of the Lost Queen is a very pretty game, and it excels at what it was trying to do, which was the Egyptian-themed Nancy Drew game. So it gets an A+ for that.
Definitely.
But where it falls short is that there's absolutely no variety, and it's all the same, and it's actually pretty limited locations, except it does have nice scalability with its secret passageways.
Yeah, so the reason why this game to me remains in good standing, in my opinion, is that it constantly expands the environment. There are maybe 3 or 4 times throughout the game that you uncover a secret door or a secret passageway so big that you get a whole new area to explore, filled with puzzles, new conversation options with friends and stuff like that. And it makes it a really refreshing experience, in my opinion. I would probably call this maybe the best adventure game.
It's up there.
It's definitely up there.
Yeah, the atmosphere it went well with the game's characters too, because as you explored and opened up more chambers, sometimes it even led to like full-on cutscenes where all the characters just appear with you and you're exploring it together, and that's a very cool, innovative touch that we don't see in other Nancy Drew games. How often do you open up a secret passageway and then the entire cast is there with you like, whoa, let's investigate this together?
Tomb of the Lost Queen did a great job with an ancient Egyptian color palette. I almost wish that we could have had a more natural glow for most of the light. It's all lit by electric lights because it's an actual archaeological dig, but how cool would it be if we could have torch light in some places with like a red glow?
That would
be like
cool.
Courage the Cowardly Dog Mummy episode.
So it does fall short, I would say, in the parts that are not the tomb. Upstairs, the tented areas, I get why they exist, but there's just not much fun to do up there. It's not to knock it or discredit that part of the game, it's just saying that it can't really stand on its own 2 legs. And then the chambers and the tomb itself are great, it just doesn't do anything more than that. The secret passageways are awesome, but we just can't do anything else, you know? There's no form of travel, there's no form of cool mechanics or navigation, it's just a cool exploratory adventure game, and it's great.
The detail that went into all the hieroglyphics on the wall alone should be applauded. I can't say for certain, but I don't think I've ever noticed copy-pasted hieroglyphics in this game. Everything looks original, everything looks fresh.
Yeah, they did a really good job with the wallpapers for a lot of these rooms, and I don't know the ins and outs of all that work, but I think it's a pretty game, and I think they did a good job with it. It's just that when you do a Nancy Drew theme this specific, you limit yourself on what you can do with it.
Coming in at number 21. This game, I would have been content with number 33. I had to find a middle ground with Julian.
Sylvia was the one that white knighted for this game so much, and she's ironically not here.
Yeah, unfortunately she fell ill, but she'll be joining us for the top 15. We have The Deadly Device. This game is so, just boring to me in terms of atmosphere. There's nothing about it I like. It's all gray. It's all indoors. No one's friendly to you besides Ryan at times. It's just, it feels like I went on a field trip with my 6th grade science class and I got left behind.
So everything Jamie just listed, it's true. But I think that he forgets that was what the game was going for. It's supposed to be this borderline hostile, very creepy, not fun environment. Everyone there has their own quirks, and they're very rude, and they're very mean.
It is a murder mystery, I guess.
It's a murder mystery. Now, that makes sense why it'd be a cold and unwelcoming environment. Your security guard is heckling you every chance he can get.
How can you set a game, though, in, the snowy, rocky Colorado mountains without letting people go outside, or at least experience the snow?
Because we were snowed in, which adds to the murder mystery.
You get snowed in at the end of the game. It doesn't snow you in halfway through.
Jim, being a murder mystery and having you stuck inside the lab makes it creepier.
Fine.
Whether it's unintentional or not.
Fine, okay, that's cool.
Now, I admit that there wasn't a lot of cool things that this game had going for it.
I
wish Sylvia was here, but I think that there were a lot of awesome areas, like the lab itself. Nico Jovic's Secret Passageway is one of my favorite, Secret Passageways labs of all time. I think it's so cool there. And then
everything in this game just looks so cluttered to me, especially when I get into the lab. It's just I don't know what to do because there's so much shit everywhere.
I really liked the hangout space, like the kitchen, the lounge area.
The lounge is cool. I wish that you could.
It was colorful. There's arcades. And then it does get boring when we get to Ellie and Mason's workspace because it's literally cubicles.
Yeah, cubicles are no fun.
Now, I get that it's a workspace and that's where the mystery takes place, but it really should have had something to help spice it up.
I think I'm gonna go ahead and just channel Sylvia's energy real quick, because we all had a good 3-hour session of sitting down and making this list, and she helped balance some opinions out, even though they're not ones she's gonna be talking about in the first place. Sylvia's main advocation for this game was that it's a dream setting for STEM students like herself. She talked about how it's so cool to her that she would love to be one of the people who works in a laboratory like this, and so in her opinion, Deadly Device Atmosphere holds a very pleasant, strange place in her heart.
Yeah, so she can make that argument, but that's extremely niche. I would say that this game just excels in its atmosphere because it achieved what it was setting out to do, making it one of the more sinister and unwelcoming and just uneasy Nancy Drew games.
In my personal opinion, I would put Deadly Device is maybe my least favorite setting of any Nancy Drew. Never have I ever had the desire to, like, boot up this game for chill, for fun.
I don't think anyone does. I would agree with that.
Okay, well, at least we are in agreement there. Coming in at number 20 now. My boy, I'm so glad you made it this far, and I wish I could put you higher up. We have game number 6, Secret of the Scarlet Hand. Now, Secret of the Scarlet Hand is this high up on the list entirely because of Beach Hill Museum.
The Beach Hill Museum is awesome. I wish I could visit it. It's so awesome.
If there are any museums and games on lists higher than this, those games are way higher up on the list for other reasons. This is without a doubt the best museum in the franchise. It's so damn cool.
We've actually uploaded a video on our channel, which is just a tour of Beach Hill Museum, going through all of the dialogue and just going through each exhibit.
It's fun.
It's fun.
It's a full exhibit on the ancient Maya.
The pyramid is awesome too. I love the idea of gaining more knowledge, acing quizzes allows you to explore further down the pyramid, and each path is getting like more sinister and dark and creepy. Like, it was so cool. It was a really great design for a museum.
And the garden in the back is awesome. I love all the jungle sound effects. I love the crazy monolith in the middle. It's such a cool centerpiece to the exhibit. I love the torchlight on the great 2 big double doors. There's so much about the actual museum itself that's awesome. I even like the back rooms where you get to go into the laboratory and the shipping and receiving part. This is a museum I would like to work at, which is why I'm glad there's a game that lets me simulate working there. Now, why did this game not get higher? Every other location sucks so bad.
It is, it's just appalling.
It's the worst hotel Nancy's ever stayed at. It's like it's freaking Motel 6.
It's like 2 frames. Every location is like 2 different screens.
Exactly.
Alejandro Del Rio's...
Taylor Sinclair is on like the 40th floor of a high-rise, and he at least has some cool art in his apartment, and I like the color scheme, but not a single window. It's kind of depressing. Alejandro Del Rio it's like he's at the BMV.
It is. It's so bad. I hate being there.
All that there are to look at in his place is just like tourism flyers and like memos and stuff. That's it.
Henrik's hospital
bed for when he has a bit of a tumble later on, or if you're like me and you believe he was faking the amnesia to dodge charges for smuggling the whole time. He's playing a little hooky there. The only thing I can say that's positive about that is that you can interact with the memory board. That's kind of fun. Nancy's laptop at her apartment is the only thing to do there in the hotel room. I mean, you can use floppy disks in the CD that you find at one point.
Yeah, screw floppy disks.
That's it. There's literally nothing else to do. I love how the pyramid has 3 floors. It's actually like a full structure and you can go through it. That's such a fun way of pacing exploration in the game. But everything outside of the museum was so bad. And really, there's no outdoor segment in this game besides a couple screens.
It's just very poorly balanced. You can tell where the budget went in this game.
And I'm not mad that the budget went there. Even Joanna's office looks nice, and so does the entryway.
Yeah.
Everything about the museum is awesome. It's one of my favorite locations in any Nancy Drew.
It's like when they were making the game, they made the museum, and they were like, oh shit, we still have like 3 other locations we have to make.
You can really tell, because I'm pretty sure there's not a single puzzle ever that happens outside the museum in this game.
No.
Literally, 95% of the gameplay is right there in the museum.
Yep.
So, with that, I think Scarlet Hand is more than welcome to take the spot at number 20. Coming in at number 19, we have a game that I think is one of the best gimmicky games in the franchise, and definitely accomplished what it set out to do. We have game number 12, Secret of the Old Clock.
There's so many little things that go in Secret of the Old Clock's atmosphere that make it so much fun. It was so successful in what it was going for. One of them, in my opinion, is just being able to drive around the little town and all the little mannerisms that everybody in the town says.
You see, I think that this game has an excellent driving mechanic. It was the first real driving mechanic in the franchise where you're allowed to go driving around the town, you have to watch out for potholes and fill up gas, and you can even make your money by running telegrams to people and getting to have a little visit to the location that they're at and listen to their goofy lines and whatnot. If you don't know already, Secret of the Old Clock is the only period piece game in the franchise, meaning that it actually takes place in the 1930s and it's all about emulating 1930s culture and just jibber-jabbing, and the dialogue is so weird at times. And the music is spot on. I love the soundtrack in this game.
This isn't a soundtrack list.
I know.
But the suspects' outfits, all of their little dialogue, the funny interactionable objects like the coin-operated telephone and everything, all of those pieces add to this game's atmosphere in a very accomplishing 1930s way.
As a town, it's a lot similar to River Heights from Game 25, only I can excuse it because it's a cool aesthetic being all the way back in the 1930s. So it does bring something new to the table in that regard, instead of just the typical Midwestern, sludge.
I know we talked about transportation being a key part of what makes up atmosphere, and the driving mechanics in this game is a hot topic in the community. They make it a little too realistic, I dare say, with the potholes and having to get gas so frequently. I remember playing this game, and I would deliver telegrams, and in the time it took me to get the money for delivering the telegrams, that's how much gas I would have used, and it just felt like such a futile process.
It's just a pyramid scheme where you're constantly running out of gas to get telegrams.
So maybe a little too realistic in terms of driving, but
at the same time, though, I feel like this game, Alibi and Ashes really could have taken a lesson or two from it, because instead of just a sound effect or something stupid whenever you visit a location, a lot of them have really cool black and white photos, and you'll get a corny voice line or something, or just like a fun gimmicky joke.
It also takes its story from the original Carolyn Keene Nancy Drew books, and
I believe it's an amalgamation of 4 books, Mystery of Lilac Inn, Secret of the Old Clock, and maybe some hidden staircase in there. I don't know for sure.
I was gonna say, but this is one of the most old-fashioned and iconic secret passageways ever pulled off in a Nancy Drew game.
They do have a classic secret passageway. Otherwise, you've got all the cool furnishings and delightful stuff in Josiah Crowley's old house that's owned by Mr. Topham. You've got the crazy golf course, which I got to admit, while it really doesn't fit the 1930s color palette, it's fun, and I can excuse that, because, it's mini golf in a Nancy Drew game. It was like Webkins all over again.
I'd say the thing that's the most immersion-breaking, though, is the technology in the barn that opens up the stairwell.
Josiah Crowley's crazy Jake Hurley level machine.
Yeah.
That was a bit off-putting. But regardless, Secret of the Old Clock scores 19 on this list, and I think rightfully so.
Coming in at number 18 on our list, we have The White Wolf of Icicle Creek.
So game number 16, White Wolf of Icicle Creek, I'd say easily gets the award of being associated with as the snowy game. Like if Tomb of the Lost Coin is the desert game, and Puu Cave is the jungle game, this is definitely the game that you most associate with just being absolutely snowbound.
The contrast in White Wolf of Icicle Creek's outdoors and indoors is done so well, because I gotta say, whenever I'm going out and I'm traveling around outside, I actually get really nervous. I'm always checking my health bar to see how close I am to dying of hypothermia, and I really feel like unnatural out there, and it makes me really nervous, which is so successful in what it set its atmosphere out to do. And then when you contrast, when you go indoors, it's such warm colors, it's wooden floors and it's wooden walls, and it's so earthy, and it feels so warm. And I feel that warmth when I go into this video game cabin.
But if there's one thing that White Wolf really is remembered for, it is just the cold of the game. There's so many ways you can die by being left outside in the cold, drowning in the skating pond, or having the fishing shack blown up and freezing to death in the waters. It's a very, very chilly game. Halfway through it, you figure out that you can get portable warmth through the Toasty Packs by winning snowball fights. Very appropriately rewarded, I would say so. It's one of the more interesting vacation resorts that Nancy visits, because a lot of the people who come up there are a bit of the oddball type. You've got bird watchers, Olympic skiers, the handyman Ollie is just... He doesn't seem like he's there for just the pay, really.
It's a very wide variety. And then when we talk about the best Nancy Drew hotel rooms of all time, I'd definitely say this one is up here, because it fits the theme of the lodge so well. And I love the nature aspects. It's just great. Each room's a different animal. I don't know. It felt
something like that.
This would be a very fun place to stay, is what I'm getting at. Or at least for me. I just thought it was so amusing.
Regardless, when the environment comes crashing down on you every now and again in the form of avalanches and you have to actually be wary and watch out for your surroundings, I think that this game has an excellent environment, and snowmobiling isn't that bad either. It's a good fun challenge, snowmobiling to Skookum Ridge and back. Moving on now to number 17, we have what I think has a fair claim to be one of the coziest games in the entire franchise, albeit it is a very limited environment. Game number 21, Warnings at Waverly Academy.
So if you think about it, this is an extremely compact game. It all takes place in this one little dormitory, and you can go outside just for a brief couple screens, but it is very small and limited. But
if I'm being honest, I feel like it's easy to say almost probably 80% of the budget in this game went into making all the characters. And then in return, I feel like environment and music both got kind of snuffed out, but it still works with what they have.
it does feel so warm, what Jamie was going back on. The colors of Waverly Academy, what is it, like it's a maroon and black or something?
Burgundy and black.
Yeah, exactly. Those colors were great because the weather changes throughout the game. Very nice touch for interactive, and it becomes a snowy, cold outdoors, so the contrast, much similar to White Wolf of Icicle Creek, is so well done.
See, that's the thing that I almost always forget sometimes when I think about this game, is that it has changing weather over the course of the game. When you begin, it's like, I don't know, a chilly November day is how it seems to be going, and then as the game progresses, it starts to lightly snow outside until you're in the back half of the game, and it's a full-out blizzard, and there's like 2 feet of snow stacking up outside, and Nancy leaves footprints everywhere she goes. And that's a really fun way of progressing the game and making people feel like they're making progress. Furthermore, I think that I would personally call this one of my favorite libraries in the franchise. Mm-hmm. It's hard to beat the library from Game 4, but this one definitely, you know, for not being ransacked, looks like a super cool place to study. This is where I would bust out the lo-fi hip-hop beats to do my homework assignments.
Now, I've actually talked about this before in other videos, but I loved playing this game again after having gone to college, because I had always played it growing up as a kid, and then when I actually had that dorm life experience and then I replayed this game, it just gave it almost a weird relatability factor.
Yeah.
Like, I loved the hangout area, and I loved the library. I spent a lot of time at the library. This game just became so much more fun after that experience.
Regardless, I feel like you could say Waverly Academy is the prime example in this franchise of the developers going after the target demographic. It's a high school girls' boarding school, more or less, or at least it's boarding for the valedictorian candidates. And they kind of hit the nail on the head, because they have like a nice cozy lounge where you can just get a snack, play some air hockey, get your ass kicked in a game of darts with Leela. Mm-hmm. And it's really weird almost, because school is not a place that I often try to emulate when I play a video game, but this is like a school I wish I went to. You know, if I was a girl, I guess.
Coming in at number 16 on our list, we have The Hauntings of Castle Malloy.
To me, Castle Malloy is one of the weirdest games in the franchise. I often call game number 17, The Legend of the Crystal Skull, the black sheep of the franchise. This is easily the weird spiky purple mohawk sheep of the franchise, because so much of it does not make sense. But at the same time, it's a really interesting environment. I would definitely call it one of the weaker castles that we see in the franchise.
Oh, I don't know. I was gonna talk about how the castle scares me so much, especially the nursery room.
Yeah, you see, the castle is a bit limited, because most of it was destroyed by an explosion that happened like 70 years ago. However, where this game really shines to me is having a very wide and explorable moor outside the castle, where you get to go to the bog and the Celtic crosses and all the strange garden gnomes and stuff like that. To me, where this game really shined in its atmosphere was giving the player a great big amount of free roam reign all over the Malloy estate.
So this game probably has the darkest color palette out of any Nancy Drew game, aside from the Screamin' Banshee Inn, which is, it's kind of it almost feels a little out of place for this game, to be honest, but I get what it's going for. But this game actually does really scare me. Jamie was talking about how the castle's a little limited, but that goes so well with the castle's backstory. When I'm in the Great Grand Hall with
the knights in shining armor and the fireplace.
Oh my gosh, it feels like something out of a horror movie, honestly. And the nursery I just feel so uncomfortable being in there. And that's how I know that it's set out to be it's a really successful atmosphere. Because that is not supposed to be a place where you're just happy-go-lucky.
As far as the actual navigation goes in this game, Nancy totals her car right at the beginning and drives it into a ditch. So it's all on foot that you walk around, and you can actually see the Nancy sprite, which is kind of cool.
There's a little more than that. We have a jetpack at the end of the game.
Oh yeah, thanks for reminding me. See, that's one of the reasons why I don't like this game too much, is because it gets a little bit too goofy for me. Like, it's the Scooby-Doo game of the franchise, because you're going after a crazy ghost, and you have a jetpack, and it's it literally just feels like a Scooby-Doo movie at times.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
Regardless, though, I think that the bog puzzle, as hard as it can be to read the map and figure out which cairns to follow so you don't drown in the bog, I think that's a perfect eerie environment. I love all the crows around the place. They're just such a ominous, foreboding thing. The Screaming Banshee Inn is a really fun place. I feel like the arcade games in there are a little out of place, but they're still fun to play. But regardless, I just, there's so much about the environment of Castle Malloy that I really enjoy. I think this could be definitely one of the games that I boot up it solely for the comfort vibes for it. Because there's not so much about this game that I think is too much more fun to play casually. I feel like a lot of the puzzles are a bit intense, especially in the back half of the game, and the soundtrack is very nice. The suspects are definitely lacking. But when it comes down to just being able to explore Castle Malloy for the first time in a while, I definitely really do enjoy this game. Perfect spooky vibes. Alrighty everyone, joining us now for the top 15 in our list, we have our good friend Sylvia, who helped make the list too. Go ahead and say hello, Sylvia.
Hi guys, I'm well now. I'm fixed.
Unfortunately, she fell sick for the first half of the list, and we decided that we'd just have her record on another day and have her come back for the top 15, so here we are.
I'm stoked that she's around because she always helps add so much to the list, and it's just good to catch up with Sylvia.
It's also good to have someone put our biases in check so we don't always just roast on the same games.
Hey, I know you guys ranked my deadly device a little too low for my likings, but that's okay. I think
You ranked it too high for my liking. Okay, you know what? Just deadly device is behind us. Let's move on to number 15. Julian, you want to go ahead and take this one?
Sure. Coming up at number 15 on our atmosphere list, we have The Ghost of Thornton Hall.
All right. So, what is your impression of Thornton Hall? I remember that there was a last-second debate whether or not Castle Malloy or Thornton Hall deserve 15.
Yeah, I was going over it in my head, and I feel like it absolutely has to be Thornton Hall just because of all the hauntings and subtle hallucinations, if you will. It just really added to the atmosphere in a spooky, uncanny way.
It does just about everything that Message in a Haunted Mansion did, but better.
It's like more HD.
Yeah. I mean, part of it you can chalk up to the graphics, but it has, like, cutscene hauntings, which I think is really cool.
Sylvia, do you have a favorite haunting or one that just, when you think of the game, you think of this?
The one where Charlotte, like, starts burning up and she, like, disintegrates into ash halfway through. It's like, whoa, that's a little dark.
That's a great like example, and that really builds to the atmosphere, because when stuff like that happens, the player is much more reluctant to go to those areas.
I will say, for vibes, I think an important thing, an underrated thing at least, in my opinion, is the historical, like, aspects. Like, just sort of being able to pick up a book and have it actually relate to the story in, like, not in, like, a cheap way where it's like, oh, this is an important piece of paper, but, like, no, like have it be so well, like, blended in that it's like you pick up a book and now you're more scared. You learned a little bit more about what that building was that everyone got burned down in, and you're like, whoa, that's really scary. It's a game that just invests you for, like, buying into it more and more and more, and I don't know. I'm gushing now.
That was a good point.
The historical background of Thornton Hall definitely does add a lot to it, because every little piece of text in this game that you can read has so much to add to it. Whether it's the little ghost stories that Savannah picks up and mails to you about people growing up in the area, or when you read about, like, the death of Karenina Thornton and Roger and all those people, it just adds a whole new layer of context that doesn't even get brought up in the game dialogue, so it adds new things that you would have never known about the game.
And the one thing I will hold against Thornton Hall is that each area does kind of feel very similar. The color palette for the entire game consists of black, gray, and brown.
There's a bit of more red when you get into the basement, but I mean, that's just kind of the warm glow of it.
Well, sometimes it's like, it's almost too dark. It depends on the computer I play. I can't even see all corners of the room I'm in.
You see, really, this game is built into 3 different locations. There's the main house, which has got a nice hefty basement to it, and a couple of secret doors that you get to explore as it goes on. Then you've got the cemetery off to the side, which might be my favorite part for a reason I'll get into in a minute. And then finally to the left, you've got the hidden ballroom that everyone just kind of pretends doesn't exist because it's such a tragic place with the past of where Charlotte was burned to death on her 21st birthday. But moving on to mechanics, this game didn't have anything unique when it came to navigation. There's no bird's eye view, there's no vehicles, there's nothing like that. It's all traveled on foot. There's a couple times in this game that we get a day skip. I think we get 2 day skips, making this game take place over the course of 3 days. But it's very strange, and I don't want to spoil the reason to why it happens. Nancy just kind of conks out. and then wakes up the next day and is on the phone with Bess and George, just like, I can't believe I just slept for a whole 19 hours. As I was saying earlier, the cemetery is my favorite location in the game because Wade offers a really, really immersive mechanic the first time you go there. Being a huge history buff of the Thornton family tree, every time you approach a gravestone for the first time, Wade will give you a little brief history of his knowledge of who's buried there in that spot. Sometimes he doesn't have very much to say, sometimes he's talking about his dead father and how he was a mean old man, and it's kind of a sad and really emotional way of getting to know the family tree firsthand rather than just having it read to you.
I'd say one more mechanic Jamie's forgetting is the ghost detector. I really like using the EMS just in... It's fun to just go every single screen in the game, and it's even useful for finding an Easter egg here or there, but that, like, it's just another really subtle haunting.
If anything...
For me, at least, when I start playing and I'll pull it out and it's on yellow, I take a few steps forward, it's on orange, I take a few steps forward, it's on red, I start to panic like I'm sweating.
If anything, I feel like the EMF detector was a little underused, because it was so much fun going through the house trying to find the place where the dreadful meter is at its peak, as the riddles would say.
It's really classic. It's a good Southern Gothic game. It's spooky.
Moving on to number 14, we have a game that gets mercilessly beaten on, over and over and over. And of all the things that you could call it, I think it easily takes the crown of being the largest game of any Nancy drew, and that is Ransom of the Seven Ships.
And just like that, the channel has been canceled. We've spoken the name of the game that must not be named.
Okay, so in short, Ransom of the Seven Ships gives you entire run of an entire island, the caves within it, the mountains on top of it, a beach resort, sailing all the oceans around the island, scuba diving down. There's so much you can do in this game. When it comes to mechanics, I don't want to do it out of order, but it has way more ways to navigate than any other game.
I'll cover vibes first. Despite it being a rather serious mystery, it actually does feel like you're on a vacation for more than half the game. It is really fun. I really love the navigation on golf carts, stopping in all the little areas, and then there's also really cool atmospheric puzzles. Like my favorite puzzle in the game is digging up the beach.
And the treasure hunt.
The treasure hunt, yeah.
That's a good one.
That's a puzzle that coincides with the atmosphere, and that's what this game does really well, is almost every puzzle has to do with some element of the atmosphere, whether it be scuba diving or sailing. The game is just a huge, huge scavenger hunt, and it's just such a perfect mix of atmosphere and gameplay.
There's nothing that makes a game have a better atmosphere than when puzzles incorporate exploration into them. And just being able to golf cart around the island and find all the shortcuts, because sometimes it can get really, really tedious having to go over grass all the time and the sand. It's a really fun game to explore. This is definitely a fun game to casually explore, even if the puzzles can be murder later on.
As you're wandering around this giant wasteland, just looking at Nancy's tiny little body, or maybe you're in a golf cart, so maybe you're moving a little, but you're just looking at her tiny little body, and you're like, oh my gosh, what if someone ambushes me? What if there's just this vast open space, which normally you don't get. You got that nice up close, you're like, this is one screen at a time, baby. No, you've got a whole island and all the, there's so much stuff. There's so much stuff, there's not even one place.
That added to atmosphere, but I wish that they tapped into that a little more. If there was like a stalker type feel throughout the game, I feel like that would have been really cool.
It comes in waves, I'd say, but by far my favorite part of navigating in this game has to be the scuba diving. I think there's 3 separate places in this game you can scuba dive. First, to find one of the sunken ships itself and solve a puzzle at the bottom, which is horrible if you don't know the exploit. It's literally Sudoku with a time limit. Then you can find a great big reef of jellyfish when you go back down to find another place, but then there's also the whole maze of underwater caves you can solve, which was a really spooky way of exploring. And really, getting to see the third-person Nancy in this game, it was very similar to Calcium Alloy, but it still felt fresh and new. I don't know, there was something about the bird's eye navigation, whether you're sailing, scuba diving, golf carting, or climbing. It all just felt so natural to me.
Well, Nancy fans, things are not looking good. What the heck happened? This list started off so well. I mean, what could rank higher than waking up in Venice, Italy? Number 13 on the list is the Phantom of Venice, baby.
Well done.
You start off in this cutscene, in this random dirty sewer full of poop water, and you're like, okay, this is bizarre, but then you get this little, blurb, and then you wake up in this really, you literally wake up in Venice, Italy, and you're like, wow. It really is going to be all downhill from here. I'm kidding, no. I'm joking. As Helena would put it, it's so wonderfully Venetian.
Yeah, one of the big things I can say about the vibes in this game, and I don't want to get into suspects too much, but the way that all the suspects in this game, I don't believe hardly any of them are true Venetians. I believe that perhaps Enrico Taza himself, maybe, and maybe Margarita Folk.
No, I think she married a Venetian.
Yeah, she married a Venetian. What's a big theme of this game is that Venice itself is kind of dying out, and that there aren't very many true, original Venetian-born Venetians left, and that all the rich people will just come to marry into this place and move there and enjoy the wealth in the city. And it gets down to the point where, if I'm not mistaken, Enrico Taza, the shady art thief mob boss, is the only one who truly has the birthright of being here. It's not the biggest theme in this game, but it's an interesting thing to notice that everyone that you meet here is either an exchange student, or they're here on business, or they're here for vacation. You don't really get to meet very many true people who are born and lived here. And Colin Baxter himself talks about that, how he doesn't even feel comfortable living there because it feels like he's trespassing on a beautiful city.
Well, segueing into mechanics now, definitely the most notable travel mechanic is that we actually can pay to listen to music while being toured around the canals of Venice, Italy.
It's like getting a
It
well
is beautiful.
Yeah.
It's so awesome. And you can pay different prices for, I guess, longer cutscenes, different songs. All I remember is the name Luigi.
Yeah, that's literally the only name I'm thinking of too. I think Luigi is the free one. That's why I'm like, oh, that's my boy.
Aside from the elongated singing travel, I also am just a big fan of the fast travel, backing out and then you see the beautiful map and with all the canals in it, and then when you actually click on something, it shows like the little red stream going through each canal. I thought that kind of tied like the world building environment together.
I like that you can bus to places, walk to places, and canal to places.
Another thing on mechanics, and this coincides more so with the mystery than atmosphere, but they do go hand in hand, is I love being able to dress up and always snooping around as different aliases, and that was a really cool part.
That was kind of cool how you could change Nancy's look throughout the game.
Yeah, the fact that like locations were locked off unless you were in a specific outfit, and then like sometimes characters would comment. Like I know Justin would make like a little comment being like, "Oh, is that a wig? Real hair is beautiful."
Yeah, Colin always had something to say about. Everyone always had things to say about what Nancy was wearing, and I like how the characters just kind of gossip about Nancy because they're all a little vicious at times. As far as the locations go, the Canas Costa itself is this old Venetian palazzo, I don't even know what you would call it, that is being renovated, and Colin is an art student who's there to redo and restore all the mosaics, and Helena, I'm not even sure why she's staying there, if anything for just room and board. But apart from that, Nancy working with the actual Italian FBI and having her contact with her pager, and having to, track down pigeons and self-destruct them and all sorts of spy stuff, just makes for a lot of fun gameplay that also lets you explore the environment even better. As for endgame locations, like the sewers that Nancy gets into...
Sewers are not that
good. They're not that good. It's a horrible copy-pasted screen maze puzzle that's very, very tricky to navigate. Apart from that, I do enjoy the stakeout. Stakeout is an awesome part of this game. As far as cutscenes go, there is the really cool midway cutscene where Nancy is struck by the Phantom himself and has her locket stolen.
Nancy does have a very beautiful room in this game too, and it's not a joke anymore. We will be making a top 10 rooms Nancy stays in list. This is a very nice room.
Maybe on April 1st. Yeah. All right,
I got it.
Julian, go ahead.
Moving on to number 12 on the list, we have such a biases aside, we have the final scene, ladies and gentlemen. This definitely should have been a top 10 pick, okay? It's a beautiful atmosphere game.
It's a beautiful atmosphere because it succeeds in making the player uncomfortable. This is about vibes and what a game you would play for comfort.
Okay, there's just like so much like intentional set design in every single room to make the player uncomfortable. We're gonna get on the theater later. The theater and its color palette and all of the amazing scary theater masks is one thing, but I want to hone in on the opening back rooms behind the theater first, because they are so good at making the player feel on edge.
Yes.
I guess. It's so random and so chaotic. You look in one corner and there's a moose head. You look in another, there's a harp. And there's no order. It's so chaotic. Like but that's what the entire game is. The entire game is no order and it's chaotic. And the atmosphere tells that story so perfectly.
This might be the most stressful game in the franchise in my opinion, and I think that the atmosphere and the color palette does a good job of contributing to that. Sylvia, you want to say your piece about the vibes?
I will say that I'm partial to old theaters. There's an old theater, like sort of in my neighborhood that got bought out. Together. It's a very realistic, like, scenario to be like this old theater that's beautiful and gorgeous, and if someone took care of it, it would be well loved again. But it's just gonna get knocked down because that's what business is, baby. You got to build that tinsel town, or a McDonald's.
Yeah, whatever he's calling it. Yeah. Okay, so my big thing with the vibes in this game is that it feels so uncomfortable for so many reasons that I just hardly even enjoy playing this game half the time. If the big thing is the parts of the theater that the game wants you to see are so nice and shiny, even though it's days away from being demolished. The theater itself, there's some popcorn strewn in the aisles and stuff like that. Julian, I know you had a lot you wanted to say about the theater itself, so you can go ahead here if you want. But then the places that the theater audience isn't supposed to see, like the back rooms and the projection room and all that stuff, they are cluttered to high hell, and it feels like you're encroaching in some hoarder's nest. Mm-hmm. It's creepy.
So the theater itself uses a very intentional color red.
It's all velvet.
It's all velvet, and the theater masks and all the columns that surround the theater I think are very well done because they make the player feel like something sinister is happening. It's just a sinister color of red. And this is a really, I keep using the word sinister, it's a very creepy, sinister mystery. The theater itself, it's not a place that you can just idly run around because even though it's the focal point of the game, it's still uncomfortable. And the magician's room is so beautiful. I think it's one of the best secret passageways they've ever done.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Okay, so as far as mechanics go in this game, the game is brilliantly broken into 3 days, and each day ends with a little bit closer to figuring out the solution to the mystery. Respectively, each day begins with a little picture of what things are like outside the theater. The first day, there's just some construction crews getting ready for the demolition, and the second day, there's a roaring press conference, and reporters from all over St. Louis are trying to get the scoop on what's going on with this crazy hostage situation, as some people are calling it. And then on the final day, there's just some police escorts there making sure nobody trespasses as they finally get ready to knock down the theater.
Subtle things like the way that days change, where you see the stilled image of the theater outside. As the days go on, there is more and more of a crowd, or it's more rowdy outside.
Yeah.
I think that subtle detail adds to the atmosphere too, because you can feel the urgency in everybody's mood about this historic landmark being demolished.
This game, I say, atmosphere-wise, it is not to be taken lightly. It is not a lighthearted game. It is one of the most serious in the franchise, second to the murder mysteries, and it's definitely got a looming sense of dread throughout the entire game, because on day 3, those wrecking balls are going to come. Moving on now to number 11, we have one of the most peaceful, lethargic, and just overall lazy day games in the franchise, which is well illustrated by the soundtrack, but also just the demeanor of all the suspects in it, and the place that we are in. Game number 22, Trail of the Twister. Now, I feel that this game gets a bad rap too many times. I think that our good buddy Hugh Miller called this his least favorite game in the franchise, which I just cannot empathize with. Trail of the Twister does an excellent job of putting you into this vastness of cornfields and empty plains with storm clouds and spooky music that just makes you feel like you really could be in danger every now and again of a storm blowing in.
The vibes of this little Dust Bowl town are so perfect. It was exactly what I think they were intending for, which is, it's a very rural area. Everybody in this town knows each other because there's just barely anybody around. I love that they tied in little details like Pa talking about theater, and a lot of people are involved in the theater in this town.
The theater is like what the people in this town live for. It's their pastime. Mm-hmm. They love putting on shows. I think they do it twice a year, and Pa talks about how he's starring in the upcoming production and it makes him happy.
Right.
I love Ma and Pa's general store as a whole concept because it's the one-stop stop-and shop that everyone goes to.
Well, driving around in this little town, it's always cloudy. You can tell this is a prime spot for twisters, but I love driving, and there's just cornfields everywhere. There's no Walmarts around here, Yeah. There's only Ma and Pa's general store. Everybody knows each other. Nobody stands out, We're all like the same income class here. We're all just, it feels like we're getting by, and it's just such a great environment.
But the driving in this game is the best navigation in any Nancy Drew game ever. It is so much fun.
Causing pile-ups it's a focal point.
There's nothing better than like spearheading an 18-wheeler and then putting it sideways, blocking a 4-way intersection, and then just watching the pile-ups ensue. Like,
should we just talk about mechanics now?
I guess we ought to, yeah. Because the driving in this game's great.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's weirdly kind of like a racing game. Like, you've got the different, cars with the different stats. You've got, the big, bulky truck that can take a ton of hits. And you just, don't care, and you just want to get from point A to point B, and you don't care who you hit, then you take the tank. But if you want to get there fast, you gotta take the Nancy car. And I think the one in the middle is a different one. I don't know.
Yeah, the red truck I think is Chase's. It's so much fun though because like you actually get to pick your playstyle almost whenever you go driving, and if you want to, you could just wreak havoc on the roads and just cause pileup after pileup. The best thing about Trail of the Twister when it comes to just vibing with it is that there are so many locations in the game that you go to with Nancy's camera phone to take pictures of clouds, and you get to go on like a field trip on the second day with Frosty and Debbie, I think, goes with you too, and maybe even Scott, where you get to go around into all these locations like the Pump House and the Fraser Creek Windmill and stuff like that, and you just get to take pictures of clouds, and it's such a chill time, and I love it. There's a couple times in the game that crazy storms roll in, and you have to put your driving skills to the test and make sure that you can find detours to maneuver around the giant cyclones that'll just devastate your car with hailstorms.
One thing that I did like that they added is whenever you were like in the car with, you know, all these professional schmience people, they're talking about all sorts of different things. They're like, oh, I wonder if Brooks' team will share the data. Like they're just talking about science stuff, and it just feels like you've got like some sort of radio program in the background where you're just, you know, driving from point A to B, and you're just like listening to these smart people talking, and it's so like it's atmospheric. Ooh.
There's so much to say in this game when it comes to the atmosphere because. Really, there's so many times that the suspects will just help you feel like you've got company in this great big vast lonely world. So really, I think Trail of the Twister is a super great game to just load up and chill in, go driving. It's got fun times, we're taking pictures, all the cloud formations look so pretty. It's a great game to just appreciate natural beauty, and I think that they captured it really well with all the storm chasing and cloud pictures.
Moving into the top 10 on our list for the best atmosphere in Nancy Drew games, we have The Sea of Darkness. And I couldn't agree more. This is a great atmosphere game.
It's a very interesting atmosphere game because while it's a very pretty location, just about everyone there doesn't want you there. It's a very, very closed-minded town, which isn't a problem. It's a close-knit community that takes grudges very seriously. Like, there's a boy, one of the characters there, Soren, grew up with all the other characters, only he was born in a town 10 miles away. So they all consider him to be an outsider, and they constantly bully him for it. It's kind of sad, but it really does build the feel of how exclusive this community is.
To talk about the most glaring part, the game is very beautiful. It is the most modern game on the old Nancy Drew engine, the superior Nancy Drew engine.
Yeah.
And they did such a good job with small little details like the snowfall and all the Christmas lights, or not Christmas lights, but the lights that hang up around the town.
For the festival, yeah. Everything about this game is so pretty. If you had a friend who was super picky about playing games with good graphics and you wanted to get them into the gateway of this franchise, I would say recommend this game, even if it is the last one on the old engine.
Hearing the waves crash against the pier and the shore and everything, it's so pretty. It's small elements like that that really tie together this small town right off the coast of whatever body of water that is.
This game is vastly expansive when it comes to all the places you can explore, because not even all of them are outside. The ship itself, the Heerlijkheid, is the closest that we get to having a full-blown pirate ship in a Nancy Drew game. It's not some dinky little boat that you get to go on for a whale-watching tour or something like that. You get to go through all these crazy first-class cabins, and you get to see the captain's quarters, and you get to go underboard, and you get to climb up the crow's nest, and there's so much about it that's so cool to explore. The woodworking is beautiful, and the light glow is perfect. It makes you feel of an appreciation for the fictional workers who worked on this restoration team that turned it into a floating museum.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you know you've got good graphics when people are talking about in a review, like, the woodwork of the ship.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, and we don't like to hold graphics for much points in this, which I guess you can attribute why this game didn't score higher. But even so, you gotta appreciate it to an extent. I mean, as far as
just for the Northern Lights alone, even just for them.
The Aurora Borealis in this game is something else.
There's snowmobiling, but it's not actually navigation. It's just the main way of
going from point A to point B. And the same thing applies to the outboard motorboat that you used to get to the lighthouse and back. One thing that was an interesting mechanic in this game is how you needed to choose to sleep day or night to know when the tide would be high or low so that you could and could not get to the lighthouse, because at times the tide is so low that you can't even reach the dock.
That's realistic, at least.
Yeah, and likewise with realism in this game, it's entirely night because it takes place in Iceland in the winter, which is, if people don't know, a very, very interesting place located on the axis of the Earth, where in the winter it's 24 hours of darkness, if I'm not mistaken. and there is no sunlight for months on end.
I really like that part of the game, and it makes me want to go to Iceland.
I mean, hence the title, The Sea of Darkness.
Okay, maybe when you're outside it's a little bit dark because it's literally outside, but once you go inside any building, it just lights up with warm colors, with like warm glowing, good vibes, good feels, like bright Icelandic colors, you know the types.
What's interesting about this game is that as dark as the color palette was at times, it wasn't trying to be spooky. It gives you plenty of nice bright interiors, whether it's the Misty Skip pub where you get to, fillet fish and talk with the old bar frequenter Gunnar and hear his fishing stories, or just the tourism center where you get to chat with Soren, who is delightful to talk to. I feel like Soren is underrated. Everyone in this game has just got lots of fun stories to share that add to the world building of this little town of Skiprot.
The last thing I was going to say on Skiprot is that you can tell everyone here really cares. Everyone is so invested in this little town. And except Dagny. But they're so excited for this festival that you can't help but feel like you're a part of something bigger. Like, this is so meaningful, and it's almost like we're intruding on it. But
and you can feel the anxiety in the town about the disappearance of Captain Magnus, especially with Elisabeth.
I just thought they did a really good job of tying everybody together because it feels like everyone does know each other. It feels like a town with a population of less than 100. And for that reason, its atmosphere is very strong.
But I think it's time for Sylvia to talk about one of her favorites. Moving on.
Unleash the loads.
Unleash the horde.
Ooh, okay, all right. So coming up at number 9, you know it, you love it. Curse of Blackmore Manor. Oh boy, where do we start? You see the Blackmore, the Penvillin name with the Blackmore like crest or whatever on the door, and the rusty gates. They creak open, and you take these slow, cautious steps all the way up, and then you go up the steps, and you sort of see the lights, and you're like, okay, this is kind of creepy. You start pounding on. You got that big heavy door knocker that you're like, what is this, Old England? Yes, it is actually. So you're like, okay, well, I guess I got to use this thing, and then you hear some growl going, Nancy, and she goes, and then she looks, and then, where, child? Like, it just, the camp, the spooks, it's all there. It's all rolled into this wonderfully English little manor that you just absolutely cannot. I swear, they were only, this game only didn't get number 1 because they had to keep us indoors, huh? They couldn't have us tracking butter over the place.
For a game that takes place entirely indoors, which I've been very vocal about not liking, this game is fantastic when it comes to exploring and feeling at home. It almost feels like you don't even need to go outside.
I kind of want to start with the vibes in Nancy's room.
Yes.
This is the most unique place Nancy ever stays at. From the astrology to that beautiful mural tapestry thing in Nancy's room.
It's like Apollo being pulled in a chariot or something. It's crazy. This game is full of all sorts of weird occult lore. It's all about Latin and witchcraft and alchemy and monsters and all sorts of crazy old world studies.
So, talking about the vibes in this game, I would say it leans strongly towards the creepy side, almost like a Scooby-Doo mystery, but what really sells it are all of Nancy's nightmares in this game.
Yes.
Some of them are absolutely terrifying, and they rub
literally
off
gave me nightmares. Literally.
They rub off on how the player plays the game, because the nightmares are interactive with the environment and atmosphere in the game.
The things that go bump in the night in Curse of Blackmore Manor are second to none. They are a fantastic, phenomenally atmospheric and spooky. This game, it's a good fine line, because it's not like Message in a Haunted Mansion, where this place is being advertised as haunted. It's not even like ghosts that you're going after, except for, the one part where you are exploring the manor to find 13 ghosts. I mean,
the decorations in this game add to the vibes really well too, like the gargoyles that are in corners of the upper hall, and then the way that the columns in the Great Hall are decorated with knights in shining armor, and the big astrology theme, which is almost in every single room in the game.
Yes.
That was a really cool factor. Going off of Latin, all the family portraits and their Latin descriptions and everything, that was a really cool atmosphere building thing because it ties in the history and all the importance of this manor to the Penvillin family. That was a really cool touch. And And then you get the greenhouse area, which is kind of just like a break.
Oh, I love the observatory.
The observatory, it's kind of weird how disconnected it feels from the rest of the game.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's literally, it's in a basement, but somehow it's completely filled with light. And it's
the greenhouse.
You know, you go down these clanking little metal steps, which I love, by the way, the fact that Nancy's, like, footsteps change from whether she's in, like, one of the secret passageways or going down. We all know the sound when we're, like, running to get to the ghost and we hear... Like, we know that sound. You did the one. And so it's like weird that you can have a distinct memory of, like, what it sounds like to go down the stairs of Blackmore Manor into the conservatory. But it's like, technically it's a reality breaking space. But, hey, maybe that adds to why it's so creepy.
I'm gonna make a bold statement here. This game has my favorite color palette in the entire franchise. I think that they nail the colors so well. The Great Hall itself is so beautiful with the way that it's mainly red, beige, and green, and a bit of yellow thrown in there, and they use it to, like, check the floor fantastically, and the columns and all the coats of arms and tapestries on the walls. The walls are green. The marble floor on the upstairs hallway is phenomenal. I can't believe this game is as old as it is with how professional they made the environment look. This game, it holds up really well today, graphics-wise.
Now, the one area we haven't touched on yet is the secret passageways, which goes... the secret passageways are so well done. There's multiple of them. But when you look at this manor, whether it's the interior or exterior, you look at this place and you're like, yeah, there's a lot of secret passageways in here.
You just get into the place and go like, holy crap, this is going to be a contender for world record for secret passageways.
There's a lot more than meets the eye in this place. So the secret passageways are so cool, and they lead to a lot of unique puzzles, and then it's very rewarding when you get to, like, the alchemy laboratory place. I don't know, this game just had it all.
I think there's one line that probably sums up, like, why I love the secret passages so much and why I think they're done so well is so for one of the little, like, conversations you have to figure out where did Linda go into exactly that, you know, she got cursed from. So you have this little conversation with Jane trying to figure out, okay, well, you know where the secret passageway is, and then, you know, you gotta play the game, get the key, then you go in there and there's nothing in there and you're like, what the heck? Linda, are you going crazy? So you run back to her room and you're like, Linda, what's up? I went to the secret passageway. I didn't see anything there. And she goes, yeah, how could you miss it? It was right there. And Nancy goes, so there's more than one. And like, yes!
It's so well the way that they slowly divulge more and more information to you about the places you can explore that you haven't even found yet in this game.
Now, the last thing we absolutely need to touch on, there's a slide in this game, guys.
Oh, yes, there is a slide.
The slide is so cool, and it doesn't even feel out of place, because after we get to know the...
Alan Penfollin?
Yeah, Alan Penfollin, the type of guy he was, it just makes so much sense why there's a slide in the middle of this place. And it also leads to the scariest jump scare in all of Nancy Drew history.
Oh, yeah. Up next at number 8 in our list, we have a game that, despite being in part of the most archaic graphics of the entire franchise, holds up so well with the coziness of the fireplace and all the depths below. We have game number 4, Treasure in the Royal Tower. This can be called one of the snowier games, alongside White Wolf of Icicle Creek, and I've said it many times before, the greatest difference between White Wolf of Icicle Creek and this game is that Icicle Creek is all about feeling cold. Treasure in the Royal Tower is all about feeling warm, and it's illustrated so well with the color palettes chosen, the sounds of the whispering winds outside while Nancy's warm inside by the fireplace. It's an excellent game for a vacation, even if it doesn't pan out the way Nancy wanted.
I've always loved this game's atmosphere. I've always wanted it to be a movie, too, for some reason, but it's so diverse, from typical hotel lobby areas to very beautiful, expansive, intricate libraries, to catacombs, to golden towers, to an amazing outdoors area, the ski lift, the desolated garden area.
The garden is fantastic. I love the music that plays there, too.
It just hits every single corner of vibes in this game, and it ties it all together so nicely with the beautiful history of Ezra Wickford and his... well, spoiler alert, son, Dexter Egan.
Yeah.
So, something that this game did very well was they took a very small element of the game, an elevator, and they made it an enormous part of the mystery.
The elevator is fantastic. You use it to sneak into the library, you use it to sneak into the catacombs.
There's so much. The elevator's like the biggest part of this game.
The elevator makes Treasure in the Royal Tower the game that it is, if I'm being totally honest. It's fantastic what they do with this creepy old skeleton gate elevator. I mean, the legacy of the place that we're in the first place. You get to hear Jacques' story from his grandfather about excavating the tower and moving it from France and finding the historical documents and stuff that he hid in the tower. It's so much fun, honestly. This game, as old as it is, I will never get tired of replaying it.
So this game would not be as good, though, if you couldn't go outside.
Well, outside in general opens up in the second half of the game once the storm blows over, which I think is a great way of making a weather mechanic into the game, having it so you can't even go outside when it's snowing so hard. Nancy, she'll freeze to death if she stays outside for too long, but you can go ahead and check out the ski shack. You find some old memorabilia, you find an old key. There's I think an article about Dexter getting out of prison or something.
And a CGI rat.
Yes, the CGI rat. That's fun too. And a medallion hidden out there as well. And then when you go out to the actual garden, Ezra Wickford's old thinking spot, who Ezra Wickford as a character was a very kooky guy. I enjoy every little piece of literature I can find on him in this game. The garden itself, I think you said you want to talk about that, Julian. It's amazing.
Yes, the garden, despite it being so simplistic, is maybe the most beautiful part of the game. It beats the Golden Tower for me, because when you learn about all the history there, I can just see myself in little kid Dexter's shoes, and how much fun it would have been back here. It excelled at exactly what it was going for, which is a very unkept, very broken memories type of place. When you go to Ezra Wickford's head, and you see that little lever there, it's just such a peaceful little spot.
I don't even know what else to say. Sylvia, you got any last thoughts you want to give for Royal Tower? No?
50 chicken drumsticks. No, I don't have anything.
Alright then, so regardless, Treasure in the Royal Tower. Parts of the game can be a little obvious as to where it's heading in terms of the culprit, but for ingenious secret passageways, elevator shenanigans, fingerprinting on security key codes to find your way through the place, it really does feel by the end of the game that you have mastered Wickford Castle, and you know every nook and cranny, all the dead ends and everything. Moving on to number 7 now. Sylvia, I believe this is yours to take the intro for.
Number 7 takes us to the Land of the Rising Sun, Sudoku, and Spooks. Shadow at the Water's Edge offers a party platter of cultural exchange experiences, both from the older traditional side and the younger, more modern side of Japan.
This sounds like Yumi's spiel about staying at the Ryokan.
Exactly. That's what I was sort of going for. I'll be honest.
That was amazing.
Okay, as far as tourism games go, where Nancy's going on a vacation, Shadow at the Water's Edge has so much to offer. I don't know where to begin.
I think we'll start at the Ryokan. The Ryokan, as Sylvia said, is definitely the more traditional side of older era Japan. I loved the Ryokan. I love all the rooms we stay in, but the part that takes the cake is obviously the garden area. Yep. It is the most tranquil place in any Nancy Drew game. Whenever I get scared while I play this game, like all the doors slamming or some haunting happens, I quickly sprint to the garden area, right where I can hear the water rustling and there's that little bamboo stick that always moves. That is my home spot. That is so peaceful there, and I feel so happy there.
I mean, for a game that is full of so many hauntings, and I think it's safe to say this is the scariest game in the franchise, at least in my opinion. It beats out Ghost of Thornton Hall in a variety of different ways. It's nice to have a little environment that you can just chill in, like the garden, somewhere that feels like a little refuge from all the scariness. You want to go ahead and talk about the New World Japan?
Yeah, sure. So once you finally decide to leave the Ryokan, maybe it's been a day, maybe you've gone out already, but you exit onto the train platform and you enter this huge, wildly confusing, all these crossing colored lines, and you're totally like, whoa, this is definitely... I'm not in Kansas anymore. I'm not in River Heights anymore.
The New Japan in this game is a very digital world. It's all electronic, and it's bright and flashy, and it's way different from the old traditional Japan that Takai is trying to preserve in the Shimizu Ryokan. And really, I feel like I don't know which side I like more. Probably just the Ryokan, because I feel like there's a little more meat on those bones when it comes to gameplay. But there's still a lot of fun to be had in the New World with Yumi making bento and getting the shit scared out of you at her apartment.
Well, we're talking about atmosphere here. I thought that the subway puzzles, I mean, the first time that you have to navigate to go places, that is a very good puzzle for bringing in the atmosphere and learning the environment better. Because, well, and as we mentioned, just the dichotomy between the old-style Ryokan and then this very modern, new and improved subway system, that's such a cool experience right there. Just to travel around the map that way. I don't know. It made for a great puzzle.
As far as other gameplay mechanics go, Nancy, her whole deal for being here is that she's a teacher's aide who's helping to teach English in a Japanese classroom. And so throughout all the days, she's always just at the school teaching the kids and helping them with their English, and you can even grade the homework later on in the game. That's an optional puzzle, but it's a lot of fun. Fumiko is the best, by the way. But apart from that, having Nancy stay a teacher throughout the game helps limit the game to only being able to explore during a nighttime environment, which really helps add to the creepiness of the whole game.
Yeah, segueing into that is the Hauntings, which hold back no punches in this game.
Yes.
The most famous probably being the girls' bathroom haunting.
Yes, with
that,
the mirror.
I don't care who you are, that will terrorize you and give you nightmares.
I remember, like, when I first played that, the moment that Nancy started moving on her own and the lights flickered, I was, like, screaming. It was so scary, man.
So that was more of a in-your-face type haunting, but the more subtle ones are extremely scary too. Like, what comes to mind for me is when Nancy's name is replaced in red. With
the red ink, which is supposed to be like a very bad omen in Japanese culture.
There's the hauntings where all the doors slam right in Nancy's face. There's the one where it's well, there's the silhouette of the ghost right outside Nancy's room, and then there's the watery footprints on her balcony. Like, there's so many things like that never make the player feel safe, except when you're in the garden, of course. Yeah. That's when you're safe.
Even then, I think there's like a song, like at least parts of some of the soundtrack like distort and sort of like warp out until you're like, oh, this kind of sounds like The Ring. Like it intentionally, people play through it blind, and they're like, oh, what's happening? What's happening? What is this music? Like they're like, oh, I'm afraid. There's a ghost.
It can be a terrifying game at times. Really, I mean, my favorite haunting, of course, I've talked about it in length, is the Yumi apartment haunting. I don't think we have time to talk about that now. So I feel like we should close this game with a quote from Takai that I've always really taken to heart to me about the garden. When Nancy first asks Takai about the garden and says how much she likes it at the beginning of the game, Takai is happy to hear this, and she gives Nancy a piece of advice, which, despite everything Takai says in this game with her grandmotherly wisdom, this is the one thing that I've always taken with me. Someday, when Nancy finds the time, locate a piece of earth that she can call her own and do everything in her power to make it perfect. And that, to me, I think, is a very strong sentiment with what Takai has done with her garden in trying to make a piece of earth as beautiful and perfect as possible.
Moving on to number 6 now on our list, we have the Ghost Dogs of Moon Lake.
Oh,
Such an incredible atmosphere for this game. I don't even know where to start.
This is one of those games that takes place almost entirely outdoors, and it nails it so well. The really only indoors that you have in this game, apart from being underground, is Sally's cabin and, the Moon Lake Ranger's office, which reminds me of the nature center that we grew up with in the metro parks. It's really just a nostalgic game all around, because this is the kind of natural climate that Julian and I grew up in.
Sally McDonald's house, obviously where you start the game. What really sells the atmosphere is that it also feels like it's not enough of a line of defense for these ghost dogs, which pose a major threat. There's that constant looming fear to the player that walking outside at night, going through those woods, you're just gonna get jumped and murdered by these ghost dogs, because that's what the tone sets in the very first cutscene. And not to mention the amazing phone call. That's more so towards the story.
So, for the vibes of Ghost Dogs of Moon Lake, it's very much outdoors, very much like you feel somewhat secure. Like, I mean, you're safe enough, but definitely once night falls, you are just a little monkey crawling through the forest alone. Please, like, don't kill me on my way to the cemetery, which is its own little creepy spot. But
that's a good point. Is that you do feel so helpless throughout the game. To be in Nancy's shoes, she's like 18 or something. You're alone here in the woods at night, and there's a creepy old man that's meters away from you, bird watching. Like, I can't help.
It's
like bird watching at night. Okay, sure.
It's such a creepy premise, but I mean, the game is also, it's such a big atmosphere too, because despite Sally's house being such a small, isolated location, there is so much to explore outside, and the secret passageways those are the best secret passageway in the Nancy Drew series, guys. The Speakeasy is amazing.
Moving away from the natural beauty of Moon Lake, the Speakeasy and all the creepy tunnels underneath, even the bottom of the well, that stuff is fantastic. The Speakeasy is like the dream hangout spot. I'm like, if I was down there today, I would like get an Ethernet cable and just play Xbox down there.
What the heck? What is that your first thought?
It's the perfect man cave.
You just become Charlie from Message in a Haunted Mansion.
Yes,
Spoilers.
exactly. Oh my god, but the Speakeasy is fantastic. I love the color palette. I love all the artwork of the dogs.
Yes. I was gonna say, the artwork and the decorations here, just from everything to the spigots on the bar, to the oil paintings of the dogs, everything just feels so rich, so refined, it's so pretty here. But it's such an interesting, it's so different too from the lodge itself. I always think of myself from the perspective of Sally. If you just bought this house, this little lodge, like a single bedroom lodge, and then you learn that there's an entire golden speakeasy under you, like think of what that does to your property value.
Oh, think about what it does to your property taxes. Oh, no.
As far as mechanics go, this game has day and night and respective soundtracks for each, which is fantastic. You don't get to pilot the motorboat, but you still get to use it to get the little liberty of going across the lake, and that's fun. Could have done with a fishing minigame. I feel like it deserved a fishing minigame more than Old Clock did, but
that would have been cool.
I don't mind. I really don't mind. This game's perfect, and the historical context of all the Prohibition lore and finding the diary of William Akers, or Joe Akers, whichever one it was in that generation, it's fantastic. It really puts you in the shoes of all these moonlighters who wanted to have a trip out to Moon Lake Mickey's once in their lifetime in the age of the Prohibition. Entering the top 5 greatest atmospheres and environments of the Nancy Drew franchise, we have a near and dear classic to all of our hearts, and that is game number 10, Secret of the Shadow Ranch. Shadow Ranch is the folksiest game in the franchise, and you just feel so welcome there.
The interior of the Raleigh's little ranch here, it's so pretty. I love the color palette. It's so colorful. It's so vibrant. Everything. But it also feels so rustic and old school at the same time.
Yes, it's like perfect, cozy living conditions, if I'm being honest. I love that at the end of every day, you get a little cutscene, whether it's just the Phantom Horse showing up, or if you get to see all the characters on the ranch together having a cookout, and they're just like having their ears bleed from Shorty's yodeling and his horrible cooking.
Hey, that's part of the atmosphere, baby. It wouldn't be Shadow Ranch without it.
And then outside the ranch, you just get this scorching, blazing, almost haunted environment. It's creepy how quiet it is, and you can tell that it's a pretty just desolate, empty place. But Mary Yazzie little antique store, that is a very nice break from the loneliness and the gulches and everything, Dry Creek. Because Mary Yazzie's place, that is just, it's the perfect little home resting spot.
One of the best pieces of world building in the franchise is how right from the start, there's no dire emergency for Nancy, but she's advised that she can go home and come back a better weekend when she calls Ed and Bet Rowley.
Hence all the chores.
Yes, and so Nancy decides that she's gonna tough it out, she's gonna wait for Bess and George to come down, and she's gonna pull her own weight on this ranch. And so, all on a whim, Nancy goes around doing chores, gathering firewood, gathering the eggs from the hen house, and learns how to ride a horse and properly take care of them. And every day she gets new farmhand chores that are so much fun to tend to. I do enjoy the chores in this game because I think it's the only exception in the franchise of where chores can be fun. Even the vegetable puzzle has grown on me over the years. I never liked it for how unforgiving the crew at Shadow Ranch could be if you did not learn proper respect for vegetables, but it's a staple of the game.
This atmosphere nailed just a ranch setting. They nailed the discipline that goes in on a ranch. It's a very serious, all work, no play type of environment, you know?
The head wrangler who's Batman.
It's all chores first. Everyone's very stern, very serious. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like a work hard, play hard type environment with yodeling and guitar playing.
The most fun thing of all to play it with, a horse, which casually leads us into like the mechanics of it, because pretty much the only mechanic is Bob. The Bob. Could there ever be any other than the one, the only Mr. Bob? We love him.
Bob the horse is fantastic. I love being able to just have a little animal companion to keep Nancy company throughout the game. Nancy has the occasional little bit of dialogue. She talks with Bob. She goes, "Come on, Bob, let's get going." And she says, "Oh, I think I'll let Bob do the walking." And Bob's just like, "Wow, Nancy, that's kind of you." But still, it makes for a really fun time. Nancy going out to all these spooky places like Cougar Bend and the Trail Stop and Dry Creek, the ghost town, which is perfectly an eerie environment. Bob is always there for Nancy, and it's nice to have a little creature comfort in this game.
He's such a good boy. You just like drop the reins. He won't get spooked or nothing.
This game does a great job of pacing itself when it comes to the events of the game, finding secret passageways, getting new locations you can take Bob to, all the way up to the end of the game in the crazy Anasazi Pueblo cliff dwellings. That's such a real foreboding way of entering the finale. Sylvia, I believe that you had you had something special planned up for this one?
All right, this is going to be bad, and it's going to be on purpose, and that's what I'm going to tell myself. Okay. Ja, das nennt sich Videospiel. Die Captive Curse hat sehr schöne Vibes und Mechaniken. Es ist der vierte, wird auf unserer Liste. Translation? Yeah, the Nancy Drew game, The Captive Curse, has a very nice vibes and mechanic, and it is 4th on our list.
Very well.
Sylvia, thank you for making all the accents in this game so much better. Just
Thank you.
Alright, so as I'm sure some of you who speak German were just very insulted there. We are now moving on to number 4, as Sylvia said, Captive Curse, game number 24. This game is goofy. It's intentionally goofy. It's like an authentic Bavarian castle that's being managed by an eccentric billionaire who doesn't know anything about the real Bavarian culture. But everyone here seems a little bit miffed with the corporate management of Castle Finster, mainly Karl the Burgermeister, who claims to know authentic, and if he wanted to have a real authentic Bavarian experience, then Marcus Boehm should put him in charge of all guest affairs.
It's a very diverse game between the castle, the courtyard, the forest, the underground catacombs, sewer places. Like, this game really hits it on all corners. I love the basement and its descent into like the catacombs and the dungeons. There's actually dungeons in this game.
Yeah, it's a good throwback. This is definitely one of my favorite castles in the franchise. At times, I might even prefer it to Wickford Castle. This could be my number 1.
That is a bold take.
I love the castle courtyard. I love pulling up Easter eggs from past games out of the well. The inside woodwork is fantastic. I love the choir track that plays through the halls. It's also nice.
The best part is that it never breaks its theme of going for the old school German Bavarian vibes.
And when it does break it, it's in like a goofy, self-conscious way where they're talking about like, God, I hate wearing these lederhosen. It takes me 10 minutes to get into these every day.
Nancy's room is so cool. I love the hardwood flooring in the walls and everything.
Yes, and the landline phone that looks so goofy.
It's a very cool place to stay.
This game has a very good way of pacing itself when it comes to exploration, along with the other games. Even though it all takes place in one night, you get to find secret passageway after secret passageway, whether you're doing it through the glass-blowing furnace in the basement, and then you find your way into the dungeons and the catacombs, so all the way out into the forest where you find secret caves and tunnels, and even at the bottom of the well. There's a great big network of tunnels in this place.
So I'm covering mechanics. By far the best mechanic in the game is the security alert system, and how that goes hand in hand with the security booth. The security alert system, its main purpose of the game is to alert patrons of the castle when there's been a monster sighting, and it does it in the most uncanny, unnatural way possible.
Monster sighted on castle grounds. This is not a drill.
What happens so often in this game is that Nancy gets a phone call from Frank and Joe, or Ned, or Marcus, and Marcus goes, Nancy, it's Marcus, call me on the landline, and it's very annoying. And then eventually you get a call and just like, alright, Marcus, the landline, I know, and it's just, monster has been sighted on the courtyard, and it's so menacing.
And you can go to the security booth, and the monster's actually there.
Yeah, you have to like watch the cameras to figure out where the monster is, and Nancy has to track him down.
It's like a horrifying realization as well, because you get in there and you don't actually know why everyone is like shutting themselves away in the little, like, their little apartments or whatever, and you're like, okay, well, are these guys just nuts? Or, you know, there's no monster. Monsters aren't real. And then you see it, and you're like, oh, I might be in fear.
What Captive Curse does so well is that it paces the reveal of the monster. You see all sorts of gimmicky t-shirts and merchandise of him in the gift shop. You hear Lucas's story about the forest yeti who comes out and feels bad about eating people, but he has to live. And then you hear Renata's old stories of the girls who disappeared in the woods, and you find the plant that caught on fire in the courtyard, and about an hour into this game, you're really starting to think, they're giving us the Kane Okala treatment, aren't they? It's all just talk and there is no monster. And then halfway through, you get that phone call about the monster sighting, and you find the monster in the courtyard, and you nearly get impaled by the gates and attacked by the monster himself. And it changes the entire game's tone in an instant. I would not call this an authentic Bavarian game in terms of capturing the culture, because, I mean, it's kind of intentional that a lot of the stuff in this game is goofy. It's supposed to be goofy, and the people who work there are annoyed at how goofy it is, because corporate's making them put on these dumb drindles and lederhosen, like you said, Sylvia.
Yeah, they sell sausages and German chocolate cake by the slice in some, like, cuckoo clock.
It must feel so patronizing to work there if you're born in the place, yeah.
In conclusion, the Captive Curse balances comedy with real horror very, very well, and it's such a great atmosphere, and it's such a great mystery. Alrighty guys, moving on to number 3 on our list, we have Legend of the Crystal Skull. There was definitely no doubt this was going to be this high up on the list. It is an incredible atmosphere game. the atmosphere starts with the warning at the beginning of the game.
Yeah. we mentioned earlier that 17 is the black sheep of the franchise. Look no further than when you first click the plane ticket. Warning, this game is best played in a dark room. If it's daytime, draw the shades. If it's night, turn off all the lights. No other game gives you a warning like that. It's strange. It's really, if you're a fan of the franchise and you've never played this game, you gotta give it a try, because it's a whole new animal. The whole game, it is pouring rain outside. Nancy doesn't have an umbrella, so she has to get wet, and she has to stay at the place until the cab company service can start bringing people out, but they won't due to the extreme weather conditions. The house itself, Bruno Bollet's mansion, is madness. There's so many weird things going on. He's got pet iguanas, he's got an alligator out in the bayou that he used to feed. There's marshmallows.
There's really
There's
weird...
a cemetery?
Yeah.
There's really weird books everywhere, like dentistry books mixed with like...
What is it called? The Book of Names or something? Basically, this estate, the Bruno Bollet estate, was built on the same land as a cemetery, and Bruno Bollet's job was to oversee the cemetery. I don't even think it was a job. That was his hobby. He was a very, very strange man. Definitely one of my favorite deceased characters that we find all sorts of writings of, in the same lines of like Josiah Crowley or Ezra Wickford, people like that. But man, Bruno Bollet's world comes to life in this game so well. We'll switch over to the best side of the game in a second, but I want to talk about Henry Bollet and Renee real quick. Henry Bollet is not having a good time. He is drowning in paperwork, drowning in phone calls, drowning in an unhappy relationship that he needs to get out of. And he's now not in the mood to be accommodating a guest, which is Nancy.
There's literally that cutscene where he's violently sobbing at a grave. Ooh, that's the sound he makes.
He's such a morbid character, and you do really start to feel bad for him as the game goes on.
Branching outside of the Bollet mansion, though, the garden area is one thing.
Oh, yes.
It's so...
Renee's little lantern-lit corner of the world, as she calls it.
It's all the same muted color palette again. Even in the garden, it's not that very lively of an area. But what makes it so spooky is there's just... You can never escape the weirdness of Bruno Bollet. You just have these 4 vultures with ruby eyes.
The buzzards, yeah.
The buzzard puzzle. There's so many weird things like that. And then you go outside and there's all these really kooky, weird names for cemeteries.
It's like the creative team for this game was designed by Tim Burton.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to put it, actually.
I love Renee, because as a character, she's wound up deep in the practices of voodoo, as Dr. Gilbert Buford tells you later.
Renee's bedroom?
Oh my god, it's terrifying. That's one of the scariest rooms in the whole franchise. Renee's bedroom is horrifying. She's got all sorts of weird gibberish voodoo signs written on the wall, and Naughty Tina from Last Train.
Yeah, the doll definitely moves. I was gonna say, the doll definitely moves after that thunderclap and lightning.
Yes.
She moves. You can't convince me otherwise. I know it.
Branching into Bess, which is a fantastic part in this game, I think that playing as Bess is the best character switch in the franchise when it comes to getting to, choose who you play as. In this game, she just chills on her balcony while the storm comes in, and does a little bit of detective work for Nancy, investigating a receipt that Nancy found at this little curio shop across the street where your boy Lamont is working. Zeke's curio shop is full of so many weird, creepy knickknacks. Apart from the Rube Goldberg contraption, you've got sneezing powder, crying powder, itching powder, all sorts of weird stuff that's just like, why would you want to buy this? This is like some really weird stuff. It's such a great piece of storytelling done through the environment. One of the shelves is empty where there's one of those weird voodoo powders, and later in Renee's bedroom, you can find the missing powder, and oh, so Renee frequents this place.
Zeke's curio shop gives off the same vibes as the back rooms and final scene. Just such a cluttered, chaotic mess that is overwhelming to the player, but in a good way.
It's fantastic. Everything about Legend of the Crystal Skull is so delightfully spooky.
It comes together so well despite it being so diverse.
I mean, we could talk about Legend of the Crystal Skull for hours on end. Gosh, there is almost nothing that Legend of the Crystal Skull does wrong. The vibes are on point. Alright, if you are an avid fan of the franchise, as always, when we tell you number 2, you're gonna know number 1. So, just hang on for a minute while we give number 2 its time, and before we move on to number 1, let's get into it. Number 2, for the greatest atmosphere in the Nancy Drew franchise, is unique in being the only real mobile atmosphere in the franchise, and that is game number 13, The Last Train to Blue Moon Canyon. Last Train is fantastic. There's just nothing that gets old about it.
It's a mystery on a moving train, guys.
I feel like every mystery franchise needs a mystery on a train. I think Adventure Time had a mystery on a train episode. Like, it's such a cliche, classic place. It's up there with the Haunted Mansion in terms of tropes, but they do it so well. And it's a haunted train, too.
Each train car feels very different from one another. You know, the suspects... This game would feel really bad if there was 3 suspects in one train car. The Hardy Boys add to this atmosphere tenfold, too. But each train car having its own theme, having its own suspects, it makes the game feel a lot bigger than it is, because the majority of the game does take place only in this train. Though once we stop at Copper Gorge Canyon,
yes,
that's when the game comes to life, and it's just a breath of fresh air, and it's amazing exploration.
Because, you know, if you didn't get to make this pit stop at the town of Copper Gorge halfway through the game, it would feel a lot more claustrophobic. You only get to have a breath of fresh air when you switch between train cars, which is a fantastic thing, by the way. You're kind of just like out in the open breeze, and it seems dangerous. I can still remember the very first time that I left the train car and saw that spooky animation. I was actually scared. I was like, oh my gosh, Nancy, be careful.
Let's start off by saying that the car, each car of the train has its own personality, its own look, but my goodness, do the characters fill out whatever cart they're in. You're talking about putting 3 of them in one car. You couldn't even put 3 of them in the same football stadium. Like, when these characters go off on their own, they have these explosive dramas that we eventually like hear trickle, but you know.
The opening cutscene sets the tone for the rest of it.
Yeah, because everyone in this train car, besides yourself and the Hardy Boys, is neurotic. They all hate each other. They're all sociopathic megalomaniacs who've got their own TV shows and book deals and just gobs and gobs of money. And it's so funny. I mean, John Gray's a chill dude. I like John Gray. He's like the only breath of fresh air. It's crazy town apart from him. Even Fatima is like literally insane. The town of Copper Gorge itself, you've got a couple places you can go to. There is the Copper Gorge gift shop, which you actually need to talk to because the people there are long descendants of a man that Jake Hurley, the owner of the train, knew, and you need to, you know, get a couple of artifacts that they are in possession of. There is the crypt in Copper Gorge where Camille is actually buried, and you have to visit her grave and have some of her goodness rub off on you, as Jake Hurley put it. Oh my goodness, but the cars itself, the cars in this game, I love the dining car, which is the one that you start in, and then you go to the sleeping car, which doesn't have very much going on. John Gray's car, which belongs to Camille, is such a cool place. I love the wallpaper, I love the samplers, I love the piano, I love all of it. Jake Hurley's car itself is like the perfect office. I love that place. He's got the cool-ass Cougar cigar cutter on his desk, and it's fantastic. Then you've got, like, a weird engine car that's full of, like, Indiana Jones Well of Souls contraptions for like finding the location of the mine. And then finally you've got the private luxury car in the back that Lori helps to herself.
It's so diverse and so great.
That's just a quick run through of just the train itself, but there's so much to do in this game.
The main mechanic, of course, is the driving force, the train. While you're moving, it's always nighttime and the train is always moving, so you've got this sort of like sound in the background as you're doing the step over, but once you park, it's always daytime, and you get this sort of sunny, like, you have to play it and just hear the difference in how she, like, steps on the little metal bit, and then she goes,
such an adventure.
And that little, like, just little things like that, or like how when you interact with stuff on the Copper Gorge map, something like the lights will flash, or there's a puff of smoke will happen on the train. Yeah, like stuff will happen like that. So you've got
it's the little things in this game.
So in the final location, you go to Jake's final mine, and I think you just straight up blow it open with a cannon. There's no delicate way of breaking this one open. Once you get in there, you then start to have to like put yourself into this crazy kooky old miner, like trying to find. Okay, now we're in the mine, but now we need to find him. We need to find the stuff. Okay, there was a bat noise over here, and there was some dripping sounds over there. And so if I draw the symbols, and then I do some like advanced trigonometry, and then you figure out which boards to pull after. Like it's this really like obscure little like coded message. It's sort of like the cave dwelling message, like the maze in Shadow Ranch in a way.
It's a great final location. Finally being able to get to the mine that you've been looking for the whole time. Man, in the end, Last Train to Blue Moon Canyon is just one of the most fun and replayable games, and I attribute that entirely to the atmosphere of being on a moving train.
Definitely.
It's so exciting to actually be in such a unique place. Moving on now to number 1. I believe we gave this one to Sylvia to introduce. Throughout all the skirmishes that we had on this list, our arguments about Deadly Device, if it was great or if it was terrible, whether or not Puu Cave was getting sold short, and all those things, this is the one that we all unanimously decided took number 1 for the best atmosphere in the franchise. Go ahead, Sil.
In the number 1 slot, surprising absolutely no one, it's the home game of the channel's unofficial mascot and the channel's favorite Pacific Northwestern guest. It could only be Danger on Deception Island.
That was very well done.
Danger on Deception Island. Oh my gosh. It's so strange because this game, they're setting it up from the start to be an unfriendly game in ways. Nancy's saying, I'm glad I'm coming out here for a little vacation, but, it's just kind of gray, and I don't know, I'm feeling kind of uneasy. And then as soon as you get into the place, it's so cool. I love Katie's boat. Katie's boat, I could live in. That's like the number 1 place in the game that in the franchise I could live in, because it's so nice and cozy. I love the woodworking. I love the sandwich making station. You can make yourself
I was gonna say, you just want the sandwiches, don't you?
Yes, the sandwiches. I want the sandwiches so bad. I can never not make a million sandwiches when I play Danger on Deception Island.
I love that the town sits right on the border of the Pacific Ocean. It's such a fisherman-driven, sea life type of town, and everybody in this town knows each other. Whether it be by politics, their little skirmishes about the whale, or anything along those lines, everybody knows each other, and it's such a hostile/homey town.
One of the greatest implements of this game is that you find out that the night before you arrived, there was a town meeting about an orca that showed up in the harbor.
The storytelling is done so well.
Yes, and so apparently, Katie, the woman who's hosting you, shot her mouth off for the environmentalists the night before, and everyone in the town who fishes for a living and has, a bit more of a conservative mindset when it comes to some poor, precious orca washing up, because Holt is right about everything, of course. It's funny because you clearly and quickly figure out where the lines are drawn. The folks at the Hot Kettle do not care for Katie, and they are suspicious of you for staying with her. And at the same time, you got people like Andy Jason who's trying to stay off the sidelines, trying to be friendly, trying to just, take the business while they can.
Despite each place in the game having a very central fishing theme, every place also feels very different. We have the sandy shores and the beach and the lighthouse. We have Katie's boat, which Jamie talked about earlier.
Yeah.
We have the Hot Kettle Cafe and its underground tunnel system. And then we have Whale World. Each place has something to do along the lines of fishing, but they're all so different, and the characters, they all know each other, and they all gossip about each other, and they're all angsty, and they all have their very opinionated ideas about what should happen to each other. And that's what's so much fun about it. Biking in between and getting to hear everybody shooting each other's mouths off, as Katie Firestone says. It's so great because the game molds together so beautifully.
Oh man, I love the whole little piece of context that people can't go a day without Jenna's clam chowder. The Hot Kettle Cafe is like the most popular joint in town. I mean, we've made it very clear, Beach Hill is the greatest museum in the franchise, but Whale World is a nice one too. I love taking all the little quizzes there. I love spinning the wheel of whale and getting my... I mean, the odds are crazy. Every time I play this game, it always lands on the whale watching tour.
But that's a cool atmospheric cutscene too. You even get to see the orca.
Yeah. Sylvia, you go ahead and say your piece. We've been steamrolling this one.
Oh, baby. Let's talk about the weather, because it's very, I've been to the Pacific Northwest coast, and it is exactly like that. It's gray, it's cold, you don't want to go into the water, really. You just go onto the beach and you play with your little wet sand buckets. It's correct. It's simply factually correct.
It only takes place in one sitting, there's no day or night cycle, but it does a great job of pacing out the game through mechanics. One of the best ones, for an example, is the freezer in Katie's boat. When you first start the game, it's just frozen solid, and you can't make through it, it's just a misty chunk of ice. You come back later, about maybe just before the halfway point of the game, and it's starting to thaw out a bit, and you can see some faint shapes in the water, and this is after you find out some more context to figure out what's in the freezer. And then eventually, there's water all over the floor in Katie's boat, and it's a great big mess, and things are starting to look more and more suspicious, and you find a cooler full of Atlantic herring.
I'm going to touch on mechanics shortly, and then I need to segue into the endgame and how masterfully its atmosphere is done. Kayaking is the name of the game, and biking for the most part, but kayaking is the most notable mechanic in this game. And there's so much to be done when you're kayaking, because there's the secret shore where you can build sandcastles, you can skip rocks, you have to dig up clams, and then you have to input all these coordinates because Hilda Swenson's cuckoo. But then, in the endgame, you come back to Katie's boat, and it's gone. and shit hits the fan real fast.
we can't get into spoilers so much because I really don't want to give away how this game ends.
But there's an entire new area in the endgame that's so unique, so scary, and it's so cool. I wish we could touch on it more.
This game constantly finds ways to reinvent itself. Whether it's when the party at the Hot Kettle Cafe ends and you can finally have a free roam with the rest of the restaurant, when you find all the tunnels and stuff like that, and all sorts of crazy, kooky secret passageways, uncovering ways to get into the lighthouse that Holt is very suspiciously guarding. It's just a fantastic experience, and the fog is great. I love being able to make coordinates as you go. I think you have to use the GPS for 5 different locations to get to them. Solving all sorts of riddles with a reward being a new location to explore is fantastic. It's just so well put together. Anything you want to say, Sylvia?
Vote for Holt.
At the end of the day, when a game lets you make sandwiches at your leisure, skip rocks to get knockout bottles on the beach, and go ahead and make the biggest, funnest sandcastle you can to take a break from all the detective work, that to me is vibes that merit the #1 spot for the best atmosphere in the franchise. And I think we're all in agreement there.
Definitely.
Hell yeah.
Well then, that is the end of our list. That's episode 5 of our ranking series complete. 2 more on the way. Next time we will be covering the end games of every Nancy Drew and how well the stories wrap themselves up, as well as end game challenges and culprit reveals and all sorts of stuff like that. Hope you guys are having a good summer. We've definitely been busy with wrapping up our semesters and then jumping right into our summer jobs, so that's why this list took a good extra long time to make. Hope you guys enjoyed it.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Let us know what you thought of the list, too. Is there something that you would change? Because I'm sure there probably is.
Yeah, there's things I would change if we didn't have Sylvia balancing us out.
Yeah, I want to know, at least I want to know what everyone else's #1 pick for vibes and atmosphere would be, because I'm sure everyone's got a really detailed explanation. I want to see the essays in the comments, okay? None of this one, just the name of the game. I want to see why. Tell me what's #1 and why.
We need extended response with Socratic seminar questions ready to go to the table.
Sources cited.
None of that MLA stuff. We're doing Chicago. APA. Yeah. Okay, well, apart from that, all silliness aside, thanks for watching, everybody, and we hope you stick around for episode 6, Culprits and Endings.
And don't forget to vote for Holt.
Vote for Holt.